Good morning. Welcome to SOGCast number 047. My name is John Stryker Meyer. I'll be your host today. And as always, we thank Jocko Willing Productions for making this production and all the previous recordings possible. Today, we're going to deal into some SOG history, and we're turning to one of our unusual historians who's risen to the occasion, who putting together the history of SOG in books that are just amazing. So today I want to welcome to the show Jason Hardy. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Indeed, thanks for coming in. And just for people who may not be familiar, Jason has been recording history, going out, reaching out to SOG vets, to put together high quality coffee table books. And the very first one, I'm biased, this was the first one, had RT Idaho on the front page. And then the second one was a SOG history clandestine army with the insignia. And then you went into a whole new series of productions, which has led to a total of 15 books. Your books alone could be for physical therapy. You do PT in the morning, like raise the book over your head, do some hot squats with them and everything. So this is volume 12, where again, we have RT Idaho on the front page, so I'm a little bit biased about that. And then in the spare time, we also have a huge coffee table book on SOG knives. And then last but not least, he also had the one U.S. Army Special Forces insignia, the Vietnam War, the MACV SOG Recon team. And that book is all available at your website, specialforceshistory.com?
Yeah, the dogtag.com.
Dogtag.com.
Use the word the, or you wind up in a porn site. That ain't me.
Oh, no. So close, but yet so far away?
Well, I couldn't understand why the bank kept turning me down. And I went in and talked to the lady, and she's like, we don't do business with your type business. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And she's like, pornography. And I'm like, pornography?
What?
Where did you get that? And she was typing in dog tag.
Yeah.
And apparently, it, at least at that point in time, it was a porn site. So, so they weren't letting me take credit cards and stuff. And took a little while to figure out. But then afterwards, I'm like, no, you missed the. You missed the word the. And so, yeah. Yeah. So you go in looking like a perv, you know what I mean? You come out looking like a normal guy. But
that's too funny. But those, with this history, we particularly today in 2024, we're getting more and more people who are now with social media are presenting themselves as a, quote, more SOG experts, and without having done half the research you've done.
No.
So just for a quick background, tell us a little bit about how you got started with this, with your World War II stuff, and then one day you read Frank Recco's book.
I was a big World War II collector for a long time. You're always wondering, is it authentic, is it not? And it bothered you. You go in your toy room at home, and you'd be looking at things thinking, did somebody get something over on me? Somebody give me a repo. So then I went through a divorce and had to sell that collection and buy her out. And yeah, my wife's gonna love this. My next wife, my new wife,
the current
wife. There we go. We've been together 20-something years, so But so being a collector, and I always collected since I was a kid. I grew up military, and I used to make these little flyers. We'll mow your yard for war stuff. And, we lived on military bases. And, I put them in.
And your dad was an Air Force veteran?
Air Force. So, matter of fact, first set of tiger stripes I got was from an air traffic controller who lived across the court from us. And, my mom sewed them down for me, and I'd run around in the woods and play Vietnam, and, just had a good time. And, but anyway, so, as the years progressed, I started collecting more, and then I got into the World War II thing. There really wasn't a lot of information on Vietnam. I read every book we had in the library at the time.
Yeah. And what's the time frame here?
It would have been 85.
Right, okay.
84, 85. You went and seen Apocalypse Now and all the war movies, if you
Deer
will.
Hunter.
The Deer Hunter,
God.
Well, so a side note, I took my daughter. They came out with Apocalypse Now Redux.
Oh, is that right?
And I remember going and seeing it in the theater when I was a kid. And,
sure.
So I told my daughter, I'm like, you got to go with me, got to go with me. We'll go see it in the theater. I sat through that movie, and I'm like, how did I don't remember this. I remember, when they came in with all the helicopters. When I was a kid, I remember 30, 40 helicopters coming in.
Oh, yeah.
And there was like 6. I'm like, my daughter's looking at me, she's like, can we go now? And I'm like, yeah, I think we can, But so I, you just kind of watched every movie you could, any book you could find.
Yeah.
You used to read little snippets in the papers. At that time, you still had POW issues coming up.
Oh, yeah. Publicly,
at least.
Yeah.
So I did that. And like I said, just it kind of swelled off into, collecting World War II and then the divorce. And then when you're a collector, you've always got that bug. It's a gene in you. And I was in college, and one of the courses you had to read a book, and I always hated reading books. And
but a book with a lot of pictures.
Yeah, a book with a lot of pictures is cool. Well, I remember the Time Life series on World War II. It was a great series. But anyways, somehow I got a hold of Frank Miller's book, Reflections of a Warrior. And I read that, and I was like, man, these guys are incredible. It was an easy read. I mean, there's good little stories in it, And I'm like, oh, this is a great book. And so I just said, these are the guys I want to kind of try and hunt down. I wound up, a friend of mine in California got a hold of one of the old SOA phone books, the association phone books.
Yeah, right.
And he called me up, and he's like, you still collecting that SOG stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I got a phone book. So he mailed it to me, and I went through looking at all the exchanges. I was looking at everybody, because at the time I lived in Massachusetts. I was looking at everybody with the New England area code. And then I wind up finding one with my exchange.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap. And so I called him. It was Joe Parner.
Yeah.
And he lived like 2 miles from me. He's like, come on over. So I came over. We sat down. Joe had all his photos out and stuff. And he's got
and Joe
duplicates.
Parner, by the way, was SOGcast number 13.
Yeah, love Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Great guy. And like Joe, there was nobody in the area he could really talk to. You know, I mean, you go to the VFW, okay, there's a lot of Vietnam vets there, but everybody's war from Vietnam was different.
Yeah,
depending on what corps you're in, what unit you're in, what have you. So we sat down and talked to Joe, and I think Joe enjoyed having somebody to talk to.
Oh, absolutely.
So I, drew out everything I could out of Joe, history-wise, and had a real good time with him. And he's like, why don't you come over into the reunion? So the following year, I went out to Vegas with Joe, and I actually met Frank Miller.
And that was the annual reunion for the Special Operations Association. That's
Correct.
what the SOA is.
Yeah, that's when we were at the plaza.
Yeah.
It was like $20 a night or something. The rooms weren't that good, but it was
Down
a good time.
And dirty,
It was a good time. and at the time, the guys were probably in their 50s. At the time, I was in my 30s, so we had a good time. And it's amazing that I've been doing this now, 25 years or plus, and you're seeing guys through the years, and we've lost a lot of really great guys. So the history of those guys is gone. So it's at least in the books. So
for sure. And, I think too, as you mentioned that in reviewing some of the books last night, there's a couple of stories where there are men that just came in for 1 or 2 missions, and they're all gone now. Correct. And there's nowhere is there a resource that documents the history as you've done it. And that's why I personally appreciate the books, and that's why we're here today to start off with the history. Like even in your knife book, which I want to go to a little bit, because the way you make the history accurate, because there's always confusion about. Well, in Vietnam War, there was a Delta Force, there was Sigma, but then there was SOG, there was FOBs, and some of these experts today get it all wrong.
They do, yes.
Yeah, so starting off with, we have the Delta Force, which was an in-country reaction force for the 5th Special Forces Group.
Yeah.
Again, you got them here.
Project Delta.
Project Delta. Then there's Project Gamma.
Correct.
So give us a quick background, and we'll hit that, and then Sigma.
Gamma was more of a military intelligence operation. They were gathering intelligence out of
In country
Cambodia.
first.
Yeah, they
Before
actually
they got into Cambodia.
They were running agents, foreign agents
Okay.
in Cambodia, and they were gathering intelligence from there. Again, it was more of a military intelligence operation.
Sure.
They weren't actually running, but they were finding people to run for them.
Right.
Because you had the Silk Road, which ran all the way up into China, since the 50s, and they were monitoring the communist, I should say,
Sure,
of what's going on Silk Road. And so
where was that exactly?
Silk Road runs from China all the way into Laos and Cambodia.
But not part of Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's further west.
This was way before. It's like in the 50s.
Right, okay.
This is in the 50s. Back in 57, 54, it started. It was an old trading route, is basically what it was. Matter of fact, I talked to a guy, what was his name? Slodaki, Albert Slodaki. He wrote a book called The Autumn Man.
Really?
And he was there early. He was actually in Cambodia riding elephants, up and down this trail, and gathering information. He was one of the DPs, displaced person.
Right.
And nice guy, but
came in under the Lodge program.
Came up under the Lodge Act. Hated communists. I mean, and as a matter of fact, later on, he was actually at JFK's burial detail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So back to Gamma. Gamma got a bad rep because they were involved with the killing of the agent.
Right.
And, they dumped his body in the South China Sea, and then he washed up. And that led to the arrest of Nick Rowe, or not Nick Rowe, I'm sorry.
Colonel Rowe.
Colonel Rowe, or Renault, or however they
pronounce it.
Well,
it's the French pronunciation of Rowe.
Okay, there you go.
Rheault.
Yes.
But it's Colonel Rowe, who was the new commander for the 5th Special Forces Group in 1969, and they had a suspected double agent. They tried to get him to talk, and he wouldn't talk. The body was wrapped in chains, dumped in the South China Sea, and I don't know if they ever found a body, but the story got out.
Yes.
They had a cover story, so Creighton Abrams calls Colonel Rowe, who'd only been at 5th Group for a month or two, asking him about, what's the report about your guys killing a suspected double agent? And, of course, it became an international story.
Correct.
It exploded. At one point, they incarcerated Colonel Rowe.
They did.
His XO and a couple other associates.
And Fifth Group was going to break him out of Long Bend, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was a plan in action.
We had guys that went in and talked to him, and said, hey, we got the weapons, let's go. He said, no, I'm staying and we're going to fight this.
Yeah, he did. And, he won, but it ruined his career.
It did.
It did ruin his career. So, and during that time, Gamma, you need to quiet down. And they sent a lot of them to Korea for a little bit just to get them out of the country. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the history of Gamma. And like I said, it was never a functioning, they never had a functioning recon element that I'm aware of other than running agents into Cambodia. And I've talked to some really good guys. Matter of fact, one of the guys you interviewed, Michael O'Byrne.
Yeah.
He was down there at an A camp. He was part of Delta, but stored in an A camp.
Sure.
And he had a name, Duché. His cover name, Duché. Yeah.
And then later we had Project Gamma, and then we had Sigma.
Correct.
And we had these 2 South bases that were focused strictly on Cambodia. So fill us in on Sigma a little bit, and then we'll get which FOBs they're at.
Early on, when 5th Group got the mission of Vietnam, because you got to remember, before that you had 1st Group, 7th Group, and 5th Group there.
Sure, they're all TDY.
They're all TDY. So 1964, 65, 5th Group gets assigned the mission.
Right.
5th Group Provisional is what has been termed.
Mm-hmm.
Little side story to that is I actually have a letter from, I think it was either Colonel Norton or Colonel Morton, who actually is the one who designed the 5th Group Flash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because all the groups were fighting with each other. Oh, you're 7th Group, you're 1st Group, blah, blah, blah. So he created the Flash, which just so happened to be the same as the Vietnamese flag.
Right.
But he actually, in the letter, doesn't say anything about the flag. It just says it represents 5th Group, 7th Group, and 1st Group.
Exactly.
And everybody's going to wear this flash because we are one. And that was it. So that's where that flash came from.
That was George Martin.
It was I've got the letter.
Kidding.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, where it says that. And then, of course, later on,
see, again, here's a classic example of you having accurate history.
Right.
We always assumed it was the Vietnam flag. Until recent, I never learned this until about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Well, they wound up, the flash, okay, so the flash gets approved by the Department of Health, so they start wearing it. Because before that was a solid black flash.
Right.
And then after JFK was assassinated, they put the white border on it.
Yeah.
So 5th Group comes around, they create the new flash. It gets approved by the Department of Health. In the 1980s, some officer who didn't serve in Vietnam didn't like the fact the guys who did serve in Vietnam were wearing this flash. So he went to the Department of Heraldry and complained, saying, because there is a rule, there is a law or a rule or whatever saying that no U.S. uniform, you cannot wear a foreign flag on your uniform.
Really?
So that's how he went to the Department of Heraldry, complained. So that's when they said, oh, we didn't realize this. So that's when they went back to the black flash, the solid black flash. Took the old 5th Group flash. And then, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan fire off. So you got guys who fought under the black flash in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then a couple of years back, the Army says, oh, no, we're going to go ahead and change it back. 2016,
it had the change going back to the Vietnam era 5th Group flash.
Correct.
At 5th Group.
Correct.
It was a big day.
Which kind of hurt the guys who fought under the solid black flash. You know what I mean? So you're kind of like, the Army just needs to get it together and stick with something, and research it before you go about this. You know what I mean? So,
So then there's Project Omega.
Correct. Oh, so I'm sorry. I digress. So 5th Group gets the mission.
Yeah.
And they created, they've got Delta going, Project Delta. 5th Group thought, for some reason, they were going to get the cross-border operations. So that's when they created Omega and Sigma. And they were training up for it.
Right.
They were training up for running cross-border.
And they were doing in-country missions at the time to help 5th Group. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what happened when MACV SOG really fired off in 65, the intelligence that they originally got out of that, because before that was just CNC, command and control.
Right.
And they were running Vietnamese teams into Laos with no Americans. So you had Operation Leap in Lima, where our government said, look, Americans can go on these operations. So that was in late 65, and that was out of Cam Duck. So that went so well with the intelligence that they got back that the U.S. government said, hey, we want more of this. So they went to, I think it was Singlob at the time, and said, whatever you're doing, I want to expand it because of the intelligence you're getting.
Yeah.
So Singlob's, okay, I need to expand it, but I need good guys. I want Delta, Sigma, and Omega. Yeah. And 5th Group's like, whoa, you can't take all our guys, whoa, wait a minute here. So they compromised, and they gave them Sigma and Omega. But there is a point in time that people don't realize. At Khartoum, you had Omega teams and you had SOG teams there at the same compound, running operations in the Laos, but coming back and reporting to different entities.
That's amazing.
As a matter of fact, the original Snowden Hall was built by Omega guys.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Shoebox, was it Carpenter, and another gentleman. They, Khartoum was divided by a highway.
Yeah, really, the road runs through the middle of the compound.
Exactly. And he said, we would go out there when you seen U.S. Army engineer trucks coming down the road. He said, we go out there and hold up AKs and stuff that we captured. He said, them trucks would be slamming on the brakes, and they'd be trading you the plywood on the back. So they built this. They built the building which at the time they titled Snowden Hall.
Yeah.
And Shriver was there, and some other guys were there, and they built this nice building for themselves. And apparently an officer came in and was like eyeing the place up, saying, this would be great, officers' billets. And the rumor is Shriver wasn't having any part of it. And he rigged the whole place with demo. And they're like, whoa, back off, no, they're not going to take it from us. And then shortly after, Omega was absorbed into MACV-SOG, and then they had the teams running. So they all kind of combined together. And at that point in time, you've got a lot of older guys who had been on their second and third enlistment, running Recon, but they were burning them out pretty fast.
Yeah.
So in 1965, Leap and Lean is approved, which is Americans being able to run cross-border operations into Laos. So there was a base up at Camp Duck. It was called, I think it was Camp Jackson. That was the first SOG operational base. And there was 5 teams that were originally created there. And they were all first group guys, TDY.
Right.
And
the first 5 teams included Idaho, Iowa.
I actually wrote it down. It was Iowa, Alaska, Idaho. Iowa, Alaska, Idaho, Kansas, and Dakota.
And Dakota.
That was the first 5 teams.
Okay.
Who went in. And like I said, the operations went well, so they wanted to expand upon that. So all these teams didn't stay together long because they divided up the teams to multiply. So they started multiplying the teams. MACV-SOG says, all right, well, we need new bases. So they wind up creating FOB-1 and FOB-2. And this is in early 1966. FOB-2 actually opened first.
Right.
So they took the teams that had been created at Camp Duck and they divided them in half, placing half of them at FOB-1 and half at FOB-2. And that's how you got the state names at FOB-1 and FOB-2.
Right.
There was also what they called the Brew Project going on out in the village of Quezon. And there was a couple teams there with state names also.
Right.
So SOG keeps expanding. You had FOB-1 at Fubai, FOB-2 at Kontum, FOB-3 later at Quezon. FOB-4 came in 1967, and that was at Da Nang. FOB-5, I believe, was Bimantaut at CCS. And FOB-6 was Ho Nok Tau, which was Sigma.
Yeah.
Sigma and Omega get absorbed. For the most part, they go to CCS, Bimantaut.
Yeah, because at the end of 68, early 69, they combined, like we closed FOB-1.
Correct.
Went south to Da Nang, and then they had CCN, CCC, and then CCS down south.
Correct. It was like a restructure.
Yes.
And a lot of that happened in that time frame. So they close out FOB-1, split the teams, half go to Central, half go to North. That's why you have state and snake names at CCN.
Yeah.
And that's how that came about. FOB-3 stayed operational till after the siege of Quezon.
Right.
And once that was over, they actually moved to Mylock.
Yeah, closed it at the end of June of 68. Open Mylock with Clyde Sincere going up there, and some of the teams came down to FOB-1, and some went to FOB-4.
Correct, and then they wind up closing that out and moved the teams to FOB-1.
Right.
CCN at that time.
At the end of 68, all that transition going on.
A lot of transition.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Doug Letourneau is the one who locked the gate at FOB-1.
The last person to leave, the Frenchman.
I'm like, where's the key? Where's the key? It would be just so cool to have the key to the lock.
Oh, can you imagine?
Can you imagine that? I mean,
No.
It would just be a little key, somewhere, some junk box, there's this key,
And then also getting back to the early days, then the 5th Special Forces Group wanted a quick reaction force. So they put together Mike Force, maybe as early as 63.
The Mike Force,
which is separate, but again, this is part of that history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clarify.
There was a lot of things were going on when 5th Group got it. They were trying different things, seeing what worked. And it wasn't until late 67 to 68 things were actually titled. Oh, this works, so let's use that. Like the The I-Corps Mike Force was actually a recovery team. They actually recovered drones. We actually had drones at that point in time. Yes. Yeah, but they couldn't fly the drone back, so it would crash, and these guys would go out and find these drones and bring them back.
No kidding.
Yeah. So they eventually turned into the I-Corps Mike Force, and then you had the 2 Corps that came around later. That came out of Eagle Flight, which was kind of the predecessor to the Mike Force and 2 Corps.
Okay.
And then, again, you've seen this kind of working, so they said, all right, we need a Mike Force for 3 Corps and a Mike Force for 4 Corps.
Sure.
And then we need a Mike Force for all Mike Forces. So that's when they came up with the Da Nang Mike Force, so that's how that kind of all went. So there's actually 5 Mike Forces, and the Mike Force, I tell you, those guys didn't get a lot of credit for what they did.
That's true.
They really didn't.
Jack Tobin, he introduced me to a friend of his, fellow SF guy. He goes, this is till he ran missions with SOG. He says, those SOG guys, they ran missions, sneaking, pooping, tried to avoid firefights, said, but Mike Force, we looked for those commie bastards and hunted them down.
Yeah, they were. There was very little. There's very little Americans who were actually assigned to the Mike Force. A lot of Indige.
Oh yeah.
But the Americans, yeah, and when that phone rang, it wasn't good news. Every time. So.
And A Camp would be in trouble.
A Camp trouble, or they thought an area was heavily infested. They'd send in the Mike Force, and then early on they also had the mobile guerrilla forces.
Yes.
And they would go in on blackjack operations for 30 days at a whack.
Yes, and even there are some good books about those blackjack operations that came out a long time ago.
Absolutely. And they wound up getting absorbed into, I think it was a 3 Corps Mike Force, I think is who they got absorbed into, but they always kept their tabs.
Right.
Because there was a task force tab. It was a task force 966 and 9 something else.
And again, according to your book too, which is a great accurate history, in the early days of SOG, they had it broken down to Ops 31 for maritime.
Right.
And this is, we're talking Gulf of Tonkin stuff in 63, 64.
Correct.
And then we have Ops 32 for air, 33 for psychological warfare, which I always forget about because I'm more inclined to look at our side of the coin.
Well, they're also the ones who came up with Italian Green,
Elder Sun,
the booby-trapped ammunition, Elder Sun, soap chips, which was the letters, that they would put on the bodies of KIAs. So the letters were devastating and just bad news type thing, just something to lower morale. Then Ops 34 was
special operations, and then Ops 35 was ground reconnaissance, and that's the way they broke it down early on. And that people talk about SOG, and then we had those Navy
nasty boats,
fast boats going up there.
Yeah, the nasty boats.
Yeah.
That again, that was actually purchased through CISO. And at the time, though...
And so give us a full definition of what the CISO stands for.
Counterinsurgency Support Office.
Indeed.
Ben Baker was a civilian contractor who worked for the DOD.
And they're based out of Okinawa?
They were. And he would acquire special stuff that you needed. And they said, all right, we want some nasty boats to raid the coastline in North Vietnam. We couldn't, for whatever reason, we couldn't have Navy personnel on those boats in case, obviously, they got damaged or shot up or what have you.
Or captured.
Or captured. So at the time, according to Ben Baker, he said we hired Norwegian, Danish, and German boat crews that would take these boats up north and raise havoc.
Yeah.
We did have some SEALs that were up at Da Nang because they'd actually do beach raids and that kind of stuff too, beach assaults and stuff.
Yeah.
So the SEALs and some Force Recon Marines would actually train the indigenous on how to do this. Couldn't go with them, but would at least train them how to do it. And I've heard stories of some Navy guys on these boats. I couldn't tell you.
Well, one of our future SOGcasts will have Jim Halls, who was a SEAL. He was at his NAS in Da Nang, which was north of Marble Mountain.
Correct.
Which, when they left, became FOB 4 for Special Forces. But Jim said he had been on some of those runs.
Okay.
And so, again, this is all new to me, too, that side, because the Gulf of Tonkin is what got us involved in the Vietnam War officially.
Correct.
And there's all kinds of books and stories about lies and distortions just to get the war going. But anyway, we'll deal with that another day.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
Jim will give us some insight.
It'd be interesting if there was actually guys who did that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because as far as my knowledge, I don't know what happened to the nasty boats. I don't know if they stopped raiding. What the hell happened to them? I have no idea.
After the Gulf of Tonkin, I think it was like, hey, guys, maintain a low profile for a while.
There could be some problems going on.
Yeah, we need that deniability factor, please.
It's true. So, but it's an interesting history. I just don't know enough about it.
Sure.
I do know that there was about half a dozen SEALs who ran operations in 1966, 67 timeframe with MACD-SOG on cross-border ops.
Out of Khartoum.
Sure. No idea why.
Or how
this got brought into play. We want some SEALs to go with you guys. The two, I actually interviewed one of them, really good guy. I cannot think of his name right now. Really nice guy. He was with J.D. Bath, and they went out with Colorado. They ran 1 or 2 missions.
Yeah.
And he said they were good. He said he was a cold fish. I mean, he was a nice guy, just cold fish. And, so you had that little, and again, that just went away. And it's like, why did it go away? I don't understand. So it just went away, and they kept it with fifth group guys, special forces personnel, actually.
Yeah.
You still had snake bite teams coming in from first group at that time.
And first group continued doing that throughout the war.
Correct. Snake bite.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And then a little sidebar story on that is I always wondered where the name snake bite came from.
Me too.
Well, at the SOA, a guy showed up one time, and I got his name at home, and he says, I don't know if this has anything to do with the name snake bite, but our team was on Okinawa, and we trained to go to Vietnam. The day before the team was supposed to head over, the team captain was playing ball with his son, baseball.
Yeah.
And apparently wasn't paying any attention. And the kid knocked out his front teeth with the ball the day before they were supposed to go. So all he had was these, his eye teeth. So apparently when the commander looked at him, he named the team Fang's Fighters. So I don't know if that kind of got translated into snake bite or whatever. It's a great story, and they actually had a nice picture. It says Fang Fighters and had all the guys' team photos, and it's kind of cool. So I kind of wonder if that isn't where it came from.
Sure. And again, part of this early history thing with CISO with Ben Baker. You got to tell us the accurate story about the Seiko watches, because when I interviewed him, Ben goes, all those Green Berets, they wanted the Rolex. I went downtown and I got these Seikos, which today are the big collector's items.
They are. A lot of people make more out of them than what they are.
But tell the truth.
It was a tool. It was a Recon man tool.
It was. We were issued it in 68. Yeah,
absolutely. It was just an issued watch. And Ben, they didn't have to go through regular U.S. Army procurement channels. So we had, black funds.
Right.
So Ben literally would walk into stores and just buy every Rolex they had on the shelf, or not Rolex, Seiko.
Yeah.
Buy them right off the shelf. And then he would get put into the logistics system for fifth group and for SOG. And you were just issued the watch. It was a great watch. It worked.
Oh yeah.
You didn't have to wind it. It's self-winding.
Self-winding.
It was.
As the first watch I ever saw with the date and the day by name.
Correct.
Sunday, and it had a luminescent dial. Mine was so bright, I always had to wear it under the glove at night. At least the one I had.
Talking back on to watch it, basically the Seiko was just a tool. That's all it was. It was a good watch, but it was just a tool. People make more out of them than what they are today. The serial number was never recorded coming out of the S4. John Mayer got, this is a serial thing. They didn't care.
No.
Here's the damn watch, As a matter of fact, in one of the books, the SOG Knife book, actually, it has the U.S. Army paper of everything you're issued.
Sure.
When you walk in. So you'd walk in and it has everything, and SOG had to modify it a little bit because of the special equipment you guys got.
Yeah.
But again, it was just a tool. The SOG Knife was just a tool.
And the other thing that you told me, last night when over dinner, the very early days of CISO, Ben Baker was involved. He went in, there were 3 trunks. Could you explain the 3 trunks?
When I talked to Ben,
yeah.
Now Ben,
he never told me that, but he told you that.
He told me that.
He got him going.
Ben Baker was, I don't want to say a hustler, but Ben collected precious stones and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was in Korea for a long time, and he spoke Japanese and Korean, so he knew how to deal in the Asian market.
Yeah.
So that's why they pulled Ben in.
Sure.
Actually, one of the guys who fired, one of the U.S. Army personnel who fired off CISO, went to Ben to say, hey, he was still in the Army. And he's like, I'd really like you for this special project. I can't really tell you much about it.
Yeah.
And Ben was just a sergeant, staff sergeant or something at the time. And Ben's like, well, I've got, 10 years in the Army. And he's like, well, you're going to have a GS position of a colonel. And Ben's like, where do I sign? So Ben goes over.
You can't have a secret war without a black budget to buy stuff.
Exactly. And they set up a warehouse on under the 2nd Logistical Command on Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
And they had one warehouse dedicated to CISO. And Ben said, we walked in there, he said there was 3 trunks. The one was full of gold, one was full of U.S. $100 bills, and the other was full of opium. He said, yes, that's how you dealt in the Orient. So he told me that's how that kind of began. So, and I have no reason to doubt him, so and that's how that all fired off. So it was actually kind of interesting when they created CISO. Prior to that, the CIA was providing stuff with their procurement department. So when Operation Switchback comes into play in 1963, they said, hey, any operation. Explain
Switchback too, please.
Yes. Switchback is, in 1963, I think it was, let me back up here. After the Bay of Pigs incident,
right,
which total disaster, the government was like, we got to kind of rein in the CIA.
The Kennedy administration.
You got to rein in the CIA. They had all this paramilitary stuff going on, but they didn't have a paramilitary unit at the time. So they were pulling from special forces.
Sure.
So in Vietnam, that's what was going on. Everything was
including Laos and Cambodia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything was under the agency. Well, after the Bay of Pigs incident, they said, hey, look, anything that requires over 500 U.S. personnel has to go under the DOD, Department of Defense. So that's when they created Operation Switchback, which meant CIA is losing it. It's now a military operation.
Right.
So that's how that kind of created. So with that, we had to create CISO because we were hiring. Vietnam was our first mercenary army that we hired.
Sure.
So so we're hiring all these individuals. Well, we got to feed them. You got to clothe them. There's just a list of stuff you have to do, and we weren't set up for it. So that's why they created CISO, to create their own logistical supply.
Because all the clothing was for Oriental men that are all basically smaller than Americans.
Correct. And
their diet was different.
And the cost of having the stuff made overseas was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how Ben kind of came in with that. So, but Ben wasn't only supplying 5th Group, he was supplying MACV SOG also.
Right.
So, I mean, you're kicking this thing off from the ground up.
Yeah.
And McNamara was actually the Department of Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
He was actually spearheaded this thing and went to them and said, look, you can have your own logistical system you need to create.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Army can't do it, so you're going to have to do it. So that's why they created Counterinsurgency Support Office. And they brought Ben in to do that. And where was I going to go with this story? Now I look stupid.
No.
But
it's about the early days of
yeah. So they fall up under the
DOD taking over the operations from CIA,
but it was still very secretive. They put CISO up under the 2nd Logistical Command on Okinawa, so nobody could. It was on the base, so nobody could go in and start messing around with stuff. they gave Ben at the time the old weather station. It was a hurricane weather station. That was his original office, which worked out perfect because you had all kinds of great antennas.
Sure.
For communications with different people.
Yeah.
So it worked out well. Once it expanded, of course, they moved to a larger office and what have you. But McNamara said, okay, you can fire off this thing. You can take any war reserves surplus that we have, and once it hits Okinawa, it comes off the United States military books. There's no more accountability.
Oh, wow.
So that's why early on you see a lot of M1 Grand rifles or M1 carbines and Thompsons and that was all war surplus.
Sure, you had the grease guns,
all that stuff. So that's how that all. And then once it hit Okinawa, it came off the books. So that's how all that stuff filtered in. And the communists did the same thing. All the German weapons they were given to the Viet Minh, and you know, so you'll see 98Ks and all kinds of early German weaponry.
Sure.
You know, they didn't want to give them the SKSs yet. They were just kind of trying to burn them out through everything else. And then finally, like, okay, you know, because the communists held the AK a secret till like 1957 or something. You know, they came out in a parade and everybody's like, what the hell's that?
Yeah, because even in the early days of my time in '68, we were still running into SKSs, but the AKs were coming in.
They were. Yeah, by then they were mass producing them.
Oh, yeah.
Really well. So, yeah, it was an interesting weapon. So that's how kind of CISO got started. By 1970, we were supporting, I think it was 40,000 indigenous troops.
Sure.
You know, that's huge.
And there's two things about Ben. Like one of the things he had to do was ration. So he got a specific ration. Had he gone through normal channels, it would have taken 18 months to get what he wanted.
Yes.
So he did it, went to a company, said, I want this and this. They did it, and they included putting vitamins in the food to help to keep the little people stronger, to help improve their health without them knowing it.
Yeah, what we call the PIR ration.
Yes.
Or the Indige ration. There was actually 5 of them. There's 5 different kinds.
Yeah.
One of them actually had mutton in it. I didn't know what the hell mutton was. I had to look that up. And the backstory to that was the original rations, because Ben had his own little research and development area.
Right.
And yes, when he said, we need this ration, they were like, it's going to take us 5 years and blah, 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 so many millions of dollars. Ben's like, I'll do it myself. So Ben did. He figured it out. The original rations, again, according to Ben, they had a vitamin in there. And the little people didn't understand what pills were.
No.
You know, the indigenous didn't know what the hell a pill was. So Ben, typical style, started a rumor. That pill will make you have many male babies. Well, then all of a sudden, we've got Indige ODing on vitamins. Turns out they were gambling with them.
No.
And, you know, the guy go home with a handful of vitamins and be swallowing these things. And, yeah, they were killing little people because they were, you know, eating these vitamins is, you know, like, I'm going to have many male babies. So then what they wound up doing is actually spraying the rice with a vitamin B.
Yeah, there you go.
Is what eventually happened. But it was a great ration. It was well thought out. According to the Americans, they truly liked them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you could prepare a meal, put it in your pocket, and walk all day.
Yeah, it would be rice and then with some kind of a meat of some sort, shrimp, beef, and the mutton.
Correct.
Whatever the other two were, I forget. But they put water in it, shake it up, put it next to the body for body heat, and at some point it'd be ready to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rice is good because it provides a starch, so you're not pulling muscles. I mean, it was everything with SOG and CISO is very well thought out. Everything was methodically thought out, which is truly amazing. I mean, you kind of come at it from different angles. You know, it's like, well, this would work, but this will be better. You know?
Sure.
So that's kind of the history of that. I mean, even down to where you all carried your ammunition in old
BAR belts.
BAR belts or canteen pouches.
Canteen cloth.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, because you can carry more, you know. And then, you know, you talk to the vets. They're like, all right, well, you want to also make sure that the heads of the bullets are sticking out. So that way, if you are shot in the gut, it isn't going to set off a primer.
Exactly.
You know, so everything was very
methodically
thought out. The devil's in the details. Absolutely. You know.
And so the other major factor that Ben did, he developed the SOG knives, which you documented so well in your book.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Absolutely. And again, because of the legend built around the SOG knives, if you could just give us a quick thumbnail history before we get talking more about the teams, some of the missions and things. But it's just...
The SOG knives were developed by Ben Baker. The original thought was going to be a good knife for Special Forces personnel. And 5th Group wanted in on it, and SOG obviously needed in on it. They needed a good heavy knife. And actually, he went to the only knife at the fighting knife type thing at the time was a K-bar.
Right.
He actually went to the Marines and said, hey, I need, 2,000 of these. And the Marines are like, we don't have 2,000 of these.
No.
Especially to give you, So Ben went to developing a knife.
Yeah.
The original ones he came out with were the 7-inch, it's a good fighter.
Yeah.
But not really a good utilitarian. And then he created a really rare one, which is what they call a SOG Scuba. And there's only, I think he made like 19 of them. I can't think of it. Very few.
No kidding.
Very few.
But there weren't many scuba operations going on at the time.
Those were specific for the nasty boats.
Yes.
It's all they were for. And they have saw back is the difference in them.
Sure.
So the original ones they made were what we term a 7-inch SOG knife. Which is, again, it's a good combat knife, nice heavy combat knife, but not really good utilitarian. So then he redesigned it, came out with a 6-inch version, which was more suitable for what you guys were doing. It was a good knife, good heavy knife. Some guys complain, say they're a piece of junk. Everybody's got their own opinion.
Sure.
And then out of that, and when I interviewed Ben, you can tell, he developed the first couple of them, and then after that, he's like, look, there was a war going on. I didn't have time to
just
watch
to think
everything.
of how him they're banging these things out to make it work.
Absolutely.
And with the little leather on the handle.
Yeah, and he told me it was designed off of a knife he grew up with the leather washer handle.
Yeah.
And I forgot the name. I think it was Marlin or something.
I forget too. I'm sorry.
Good guy. Like I said, they're a great knife. They've become collectible over the day. And there's I think 9 different versions of them.
Now.
Yeah, and you can tell in the book, we were kind of interested in how this kind of went. And you can tell by the photographs on when the knives came in.
Sure.
You could tell the different knives by the way they're being worn and when they're being worn. So we kind of got good dates on when these knives came in. Now, a little sidebar to that, I had a display, and it's in the book, I had a display one time at a gun show in Massachusetts, and one of the cases had some SOG knives in it, and a guy walks by, he looks, you can tell there's something on his mind. He came right back, and he goes, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, and he goes, are those SOG knives? And I said, yeah, how do you know that? And he goes, I got a story. Yeah. He said, look, I'm nobody. He said, I was in the logistical system. In the Trangar Da Nang, one of those places.
Yeah.
He said, we were out one time, we got a new officer and you got to remember, back then it was a paper army. Everything was paper.
Right.
Well, one of the new officers came in and they were doing inventory. He checked the wrong box of a helicopter, a Huey that came in, that it was damaged beyond repair. Well, the paperwork got submitted before the commanding officer could catch it. So when it was caught, instead of going back to fix the paperwork, he ordered his guys go get the equipment and bury that helicopter. So he said, we went out, we got equipment, and we buried this helicopter on our compound. Brand new helicopter, So he said, a couple months later, this box of SOG knives comes in and gets stolen. He said, we got more CID and military police investigating us, bringing us in, sitting us down, questioning us over these damn knives. And he's like, there's a helicopter over there.
$1 million or $100,000 helicopter.
They're worried about this box of knives. So a little sidebar story, but it was a great story. The guy's like, this is the way it was,
Sure.
And again, that's another part that a lot of historians today seem to forget was, it was a paper army then.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't, keyboards coming up with stuff. Everything was in triplicate, got sent off to the various agencies or what had to go to. So, but yeah, that's kind of a little sidebar on the SOG knives, on the history of the SOG knives. They wound up going all the way through The last batch was made in 71, 72, and they were actually issued to the JCRC, which was a Joint Casualty Recovery Center at that time.
When they started looking for MIAs.
MIAs, correct. Yeah, and that actually fell up under, early on, it was under Ops 80. Was
Ops 80?
Ops 80.
What was that?
That was the early form of the JCRC.
Okay.
And it was a way that we were kind of going into trying to
That's where Norm Doney was involved.
Yeah, correct.
He was the first sergeant down at the Khartoum CCC, and for years he worked in the POW MIA mission.
Correct. But during the war, we actually had what they called Ops 80, which was which fell up under the JCRC. But at the time, it was a Joint Casualty Resolution Center or Recovery Center. One of the two. Yeah. And they would actually be able to go into an area and look for missing teams or what have you. Don't know a lot about it, and that's where the one individual, I can't think of his name now, he got killed. He borrowed a lot of money. What the hell is his name? He's buried outside of Bragg. He got really involved in
the whole POW MIA.
He got really involved. He was in that, and then he was tired of. He would get good intel, and then by the time the intel goes up the chain of command and come back down, the person had been moved.
Right.
So he got a good intel of several Americans, and he wound up going into Laos by himself. He went on R&R and went into Laos to try and get these people out. And he was killed.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, his matter of fact, Butler's one of the ones who Jim Butler, who got it. The ambassador of Laos came in. They recovered his body because SOG, obviously, when he went missing, it was like, where the hell's this guy at? He's got a wealth of information in his head. Yeah, and he's missing. And he was talking to guys saying, "Hey, you want to go with me? You want to go with me?" And he just disappeared. And then they found out he got killed.
Oh, wow.
So they actually made a point to make sure they got his body.
Sure.
And it was brought into NKP in Thailand by a helicopter. And Jim Butler, I think Wheeler, and a couple other guys actually took his body off. Yeah, Jim Wheeler took the body off the helicopter. And they actually had another plane come in with some surgeon to verify in flight that's who that is.
Wow.
Because you had so many operations compromised.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a real bad story, but he was just tired of the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
Type thing. So he decided to do something about it by himself.
So running back, anything else coming out of Cisco? I mean, we had so many experimental weapons like the rocket pistol, and they had a pump M79.
They did.
Came out with.
Actually, one of those is actually on display in the museum in Hanoi.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I focused right in on that. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Because they only had like 200 of them in country.
And there's a couple different kinds.
There were, but the one pump, the main pump, it's pretty much a overgrown shotgun.
Yeah, a big shotgun with 40 millimeter rounds.
And when you talk to guys, team guys, it's like, well, which one was faster? And they actually had competitions.
No.
Yeah, to see who could fire off in accuracy.
Yeah.
And the Indige, they had it down pat with the old M79. I mean, they were bang, bang, bang. It was an interesting kind of thing. They're like, yeah. Plus, if the tube was aluminum.
Yeah.
So if it got dung, it's useless.
Yeah.
So they went back to the M79. I always kind of wondered what happened to all the M79s you guys cut down.
That's a good question.
I mean, they went off military book.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're pistol size. Where the hell are all these things? As you see, everybody's having them.
Sure.
It was a smart idea.
Gave us extra firepower.
Absolutely did.
Critical.
So it's great. So you kind of wonder about that. CISO did weapons.
We had all kinds of pistols and
then I was talking to you the other day. Gene Manor, who ran House 50, which was the SOG supply house, main SOG supply house. They put a large building on, and he said when you walked in the doors, he said the classifications got heavier or higher the further down the cage you went. And he said, you go in and you see sleeping bags. He's like, well, I'm in charge of this. I must have to walk through this thing, at least see what it is.
Yeah.
And he had his supply sergeant there, and he's like, walk me through. These are sleeping bags. These are uniforms. These are this, and these are that. And he said, I look over, and he said, I see these huge syringes. And he's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And his sergeant says, well, he said, we got them in. He said, we sent them up to a couple of the CNCs. They were supposed to be issued to some recon teams. I've never interviewed a guy who said, I did this.
Right.
But they had these huge syringes with a tube. And supposedly, when you whack a guy on the trail, you put the tube down his throat and pull out his stomach contents to be evaluated.
Yeah.
Again, he said they were there, but I've never interviewed a guy who said, I did that.
We've had guys that have brought back stomach contents, but they didn't say anything about a syringe.
It's just a big, big syringe type thing, it just suck it all out. But I mean, somewhere along the line, in some warehouse or some surplus store, there's going to be these things. Nobody's going to know what the hell they are.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, a friend of mine bought, he bought like back in the 80s and 90s, he bought like 10 Fulton Skyhook systems. 10? 10 of them. Out of a surplus store. The guy thought they were some type of oil rig worker suit. Yeah. Remember John Wayne, the movie Green Berets?
Sure.
The Fulton Skyhook, where they blow up the balloon and he got picked up
by a C-130.
Yeah, got 10 of them out of there. Because the Army, said, all right, we tried this, it didn't work, or it worked.
It worked,
but it wasn't really set up for the jungles.
Right. And Jack Singlaw personally tested it.
Yes,
as a colonel.
Yes, they did.
He says, before my guys do it, I want to make sure it works.
And that's crazy.
I know.
That was a rope. It wasn't a cable. It was a rope. And then you got a guy on the back of this plane with a little hook pulling you in.
Yeah.
Like a big cane.
Sure.
I couldn't fathom that. And he's sitting there wrenching that thing up. I mean, and when it isn't like you shoot right off the ground. You got to go at an angle.
Yeah.
To pull that slack of the rope. So I'm just like, it's amazing. Yeah. Again, some of the things they came out with. I actually watched a documentary on, I think his name is Robert Fulton. He's the one who created that. He was a great inventor. He created all kinds of stuff. He was one of the first ones to create a plane that can turn into a car.
No.
Yeah, you could detach the wings and drive off. Yeah, I mean, he was always thinking. He was always thinking. I know USASOC is, last couple of years, they've been trying to hunt down the guys who did the Fulton Skyhook recovery thing. And, trying to get a list of guys together who actually did it. I know 2 or 3. Skip Lanigan was one of them. He was an early Omega guy. He had RT Nail, and he did it.
Oh, is that right?
And then Colonel Shungle.
Yeah.
He was head of Ops 35 for a while. He did it. He got drugged through the stands. Yeah. Lucky it didn't kill him. I mean,
oh my God.
Yeah, he got drugged through the stands. A big parade thing going on. Yeah, we're going to do this, blah, blah, blah.
What's the colonel?
Yeah. But yeah, Singlaw did it. I think Sadler did it.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah, Sadler did
I didn't know that.
Well, Singlaw, Sadler, and Kavanaugh, they all knew each other from the 11th Airborne, World War II.
Right.
That's how they all knew each other. And the gig for Chief SOG was a 2-year tour.
Sure.
It wasn't a 1 year.
No.
Because by the time you got in, kind of got knowing what's going on, you'd be
and
leaving.
Jack was in for over 2 years.
Yes.
He extended before Kavanaugh came in.
Yeah, because he put
August of 68.
He put a phone call into Kavanaugh, said, hey, I got a job for you.
Yeah.
And then Kavanaugh called Skip Sadler and said, hey, I got a job for you.
Yeah.
And kind of brought them all up under his command, which is great. I mean, you got some guys who you trust and know that they're real Army guys, because all those guys were combat guys.
Oh, sure.
They all served. Skip was a great guy. I really enjoyed Skip. Kavanaugh was a really nice guy.
Complete gentleman.
Yeah, back during the PRU ceremony at Bragg when Saul got the Presidential Unit
PUC, yeah.
I got a note up under my door. Report to this room at this time. Bring a bottle of Johnny Walker Red. So I'm like, oh, what the hell's this?
Yeah.
So I showed up, and it was the 3 Chief SOGs.
Really?
All in a room. Yeah, we're sitting there drinking, smoking cigars.
Oh my God!
And back when you can, smoke in a hotel room.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a great time. Just being able to sit there with those guys and talk with them. It was just incredible.
Yeah, because that was the first time I got to meet several of them. We heard about it all the time.
Correct. Yeah.
And Kavanaugh had visited FOB4 when I was down there, and had a letter of commendation from him. But that was it until we had the PUC, which was April 4th, 2000.
Yeah, it was a great time. That was a real good time. There was still at that time. There's 2 or 3 guys who were still active duty.
Sure.
Who had served in McAfee SOG.
Yeah, some guy named Eldon Bardwell was there.
Bardwell, yeah. I think Musselman was there. Galen. It was a real honor to be there and talk to the guys. And,
sure.
Talking to the guys in the audience, trying to figure out who they were. Matter of fact, I think that may have been the first time I met Joe Walker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he came in. Yeah.
So Joe Walker from RT California.
Yeah,
CCC.
California. Yeah, really great guy. He was. I think in one of the books it describes him as a professor. He wore glasses.
He had glasses,
which was interesting because when I interviewed him, I said, "You wore glasses." And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "I had 3 pair, just in case something happened." I had 3 pair because you got to remember too, there were guys who were kicked out of SF training because they wore glasses.
Right. Doug Gottschall, John Peters,
exactly.
The name too.
No, we don't need you. And
they get in country.
Here Joe Walker is, and he had those birth control glasses.
Yeah, he looked horrible in them.
But he was a hell of a soldier. Hell of a soldier. He was early Project Delta. Had a falling out with his officers, and he's like, I'm out of here. And he heard about SOG. Went over to Contim, said, "You got a job for me?" And they're like, "You run Recon?" And he's like, "Hell yeah, I do." And they're like, "Come on in," And that's how Joe wound up getting California.
Sure.
Joe was interesting because usually a Recon team would be 2-3 Americans in 4 or 5 indigenous personnel.
Right.
Joe actually modified that. He had 5-6 Americans and up to 14 indigenous personnel.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, he went in.
I knew he had big teams. I didn't realize they were that big.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I interviewed him about talked to him about the patch, you just noticed the patch would just say California. It doesn't say RT. It just says California.
Right.
And I said, "Why is that?" And he's, "Well, the Sabres were airborne, And he goes, "I didn't purposely put that on there." He says, "Because we were a Recon team until we found the NVA. Then we became an assault force." And you got to remember at that time, the NVA were starting to figure out y'all's tactics.
Sure.
Okay, this is what's going to happen. Well, here comes this other totally different team who will assault through you.
Yeah.
And Joe's one of the first ones who actually started carrying a mortar. He'd fire a mortar from the hip.
60 millimeter.
60 millimeter mortar from the hip.
I can't imagine.
I got photos of him out there, with a sling. I couldn't imagine doing it. I mean, I don't care what kind of charge you put in it. I just, and you look at these little people, the Indians holding this thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap, this is crazy. And again, Joe methodically thought out things. He took Claymore bags.
Yeah.
And he had them custom sewn to where each one would hold 3 or 4 mortar rounds.
Yeah.
And then they would tie them a specific way onto the back of the ruck. So when contact was made, the mortarman would drop down. His assistant would just, when guys were going by him, they'd pull a string, which would drop the mortar rounds right there.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. He was very methodical and thinking out stuff, And then he wound up, did a tour there, wound up going over Project 404 in Laos, which was a CIA program at the time.
The one that was further west.
Yeah, there were some really interesting things going on there. And then he came back to Contim for another tour. And the minute he walked back in the compound, I was like, "No, he's California." Yeah, that's Joe Walker. That's his team. So
sure.
Joe was good 1-0. And again, he was one of the ones who did multiple tours. And like yourself, you went back for a second, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people don't realize, we figure there's probably 1,500 guys who actually ran Recon.
Because that's always been a topic to debate, but you figured this out better.
Well, you kind of, now everybody has their own way of looking at it. And the way I look at it, hey, you know, if you went out once and stepped off the bird, you're on the team. You know,
you're there.
You may have came back and
You've
said,
been on the ground.
I am done, but you went out.
We had a guy like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You give the guy credit for that.
Sure,
you know
but
what I mean?
he did what he had to do when he's on the ground.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of the way I kind of look at things. Now, again, hatchet forces are different. I don't know a lot about the hatchet forces other than they're too big to hide and too small to fight for any length of time. You know,
Indeed.
They did some great missions. They really kind of mixed it up with the NVA real well, but I don't know a lot about them. You know, I haven't talked to a lot of guys. Sure. You know, in reference to the hatchet, I just haven't ran into them. You know, type thing. So
that'll put us back to the early days of some of the SOG Recon teams, and of course on your number too. Like you've documented, I think it's 60 plus Recon teams through your books, and some of those teams will have as many as 20 men over the entire history of the team, where other teams may only have 3 or 4 men.
Correct, and
Each team is so different.
It's very different, and sometimes you do your best. You get a hold of a guy. Okay, who did you serve with?
Yeah.
Okay, I was on a team with this guy and this guy. All right, so now you're going to try and track those guys down because that's your lineage. Well, I left. I turned the team over to this guy. And like I told you before, I talk with my hands. I'm married to an Italian. I picked up her mannerisms. I don't know why, but yeah. So, you know, so you're trying to find the lineage. Sometimes, you know, either the guy died or was killed or you just couldn't find him. Yeah. You know, so there's a blank, you know, especially CCN because of the August 23rd sapper attack. Right. You know, Bonnie Cooper's documented it real well. It was 16 people who were killed. And I've even in my books wrote 18.
Yeah, so, me too. I had 18 years ago, and then thanks to Bonnie's work.
Yeah, she did a great job. Yeah. But I think there was 50-something Purple Hearts that were issued that day. Now, obviously, that means the guy got wounded. Yeah. Nobody knows how bad he got wounded, how he got medevaced out. Did he get medevaced out? I mean, nobody knows. So there was a period of time where FOB 4 was down. You know, you couldn't run. You were trying to cob teams together and put teams together. Everything was being rebuilt. So you lose the lineage there. So sometimes there are gaps, you know, and there's just no way of filling in that gap. There's just no way. Supposedly there's some records in Pennsylvania. I've never seen them. You know, I found 6 months worth of declassified SOG reports, and they're from 1966.
They're very early days.
Very early days. Yeah. And there's only 6 months worth. And that's it. Because Singlob one day, you know, at the front of the report would have a little box, and, you know, it'd show how many were printed and where they went. You know, CIA, White House, blah, blah, blah. And Singlob noted that the Air Force was getting a copy of it, and Singlob put a stop to it. And I was, shit, you know, because that's the only way we had those, because they were in the Air Force archives.
No kidding.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So,
because I remember one of the SORs, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, the next time you do a book, you might want to interview me because my last duty, I think it was Khartoum, my job was to take those after action reports and I burn them." Okay. He destroyed them. I was like, oh. Yeah. I said, "Did you pull any aside just for He says, "Oh, no."
Yeah. Well, there's two things. Actually, what people don't realize, the Phoenix program was totally separate than SOG. Right. You know, it was a CIA thing. I actually have a roster.
We had SF men that went there and served in it.
Yes.
But it's correct. It is not.
It is not part of SOG. You know, it doesn't even come close to it.
Nor PRU.
No, the PRU. So there was one guy, and sidetrack, there was one guy who was with the Phoenix program, and he actually had a secretary write down the name and address to everybody who was in the unit before he burned them. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, so we have that. So when somebody says, "Oh, I was in the Phoenix program," like, "Yeah, what's your name?" Go
sure.
into my files and pull out my roster, you know, type thing. Because that's still very hush-hush. Every book I've read about it, I think they were so departmentalized, they didn't know what the hell was going on. You know, every book is different. Yeah. You know, so that's just kind of a sidebar. and I forgot what the hell they were.
Well, but the part about the PRU, they had the PRU that would go out and actually do some of the tactics and working with Phoenix, and the Phoenix program was the most effective program against communist agents that were working in the local villages, and they went after that infrastructure. They really hurt the Viet Cong.
They did.
And of course, our allies went to the extreme, killed some people that shouldn't have been killed, disappeared some people that should have been disappeared, and then the Washington Post gets a hold of it. Instead of emphasizing the positive, we'll emphasize the negative, and then destroy a program where we're hurting the enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, the PRU was the muscle arm of the Phoenix program. Phoenix more like the brain, and yeah, they did a hell of a job demoralizing the Viet Cong infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Within Vietnam. And, my theory too is I think the Tet Offensive did a lot of that too.
Oh, yeah.
The NVA were kind of like, how are we going to get rid of these bandit guerrillas that we've created? I got this great idea. The Tet Offensive.
I don't think they...
Let them assault the base. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got a job for you, So I think that kind of wiped out most of the Viet Cong infrastructure by the Tet Offensive.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, again, it's history, but it's separate than that of SOG.
And two, the majority of the Viet Cong units, as by 67, 68, they usually had somebody from North Vietnam was in it, either the politician, whatever they called them, or somebody working the operations side. So you always had that NVA presence.
Absolutely. Well, early on, they sent advisors to train what they called the VC main force units. And it was a way of working their way in.
Oh, yeah.
It was definitely.
Sure.
It was well thought out. People don't give the NVA credit for as organized as they were.
Right. As well as then we could at some point talk about SOG being compromised.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were, and a lot of people don't realize too, there's a great book called Inside the NVA and VC. It's an old book, but it's great. He actually went and interviewed some NVA soldiers. Mm-hmm. He got down to what they carried in their rucks and you're marching down this damn trail, hiding from you guys.
We're talking about the Ho Chi Minh Trail from Hanoi south into Vietnam, through Laos, so that there'd be trails that would go into South Vietnam, go attack, and then go back to Laos or Cambodia and lick their wounds.
Well, when they came out of the north, though, you're walking all day. You're getting bombed. Hike. You got recon teams, peering in on you, so, you're on your game, you know. And every day at the end of the day, when you're just tired and you want to go to sleep, no. You got an hour of indoctrination. You got to listen to the cadre, commissar, whatever they're called. Yeah. For an hour talking about, communism, how great it is. And so, it burns in your brain eventually. I mean, they were dedicated little soldiers, I got to tell you.
No question about it.
They were dedicated,
Oh, yeah.
Give them that, so.
For sure.
Again, it's interesting, and a lot of people don't realize, the Soviets had advisors there. The Cubans.
Over 3,000.
Cubans
were there.
And the Chinese were there. People don't put all this together, so
right.
It's history. It's all great history. And now all that's starting to kind of come out. Yeah, all right, we were there too,
sure.
Type of thing. So.
Yeah, because years ago, the Russians had a reunion of Russians from the Russian secret war in Vietnam, and they documented that over 3,000 were there. Most of them were cannon cockers, anti-aircraft, but some were there for training, and some were went south. Correct. With the anti-aircraft artillery crews and things like that.
Yeah, well, the Cubans were there.
Sure.
Their military intelligence.
Well, Lynn Black talked to one.
Yeah,
him and the Frenchman.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not one missing. The guy came up.
A friend of mine served at Khartoum, whacked one in Laos.
Is that right?
He was like, he's definitely Cuban. He had a mustache, and
sure.
He was Spanish. He wasn't Asian.
He's speaking the Hispaniola.
Yeah. So he whacked him in Laos. So and
nice.
I always wanted to. My next trip, I wanted to go to Cuba, to go into their war museums and see what they have.
You think they'll let you in? A real historian?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd bait them with the, hey, look, I got about coordinates of where one of your guys was killed, type thing, and see if you can't get in. Usually the museums, they'll kind of let you in, and if the curator takes an interest in you and you kind of talk, they'll kind of let you go in the back room. When I was in Vietnam, I talked to a couple of them and pay a couple people. And they
So how many trips to Vietnam?
I only did one.
The one.
But I definitely want to go back.
And you ended up in Hanoi.
Yeah, Hanoi. I did the whole gamut. You know, I went and found FOB 1, the little rock wall still there.
Is that right?
Yeah, the little rock wall still there. Went to CCN, and when you're up on top of Marble Mountain, which is a lot smaller than I thought it was. When you get up there, it's like, you put how many guys up here? I mean, it was small, you know?
Yeah.
And you could see some cement pads where buildings were when I was there. They had just tore down the last Alamo that got tore down like a year before I got there. And then I went down to Kontum, found where Kontum was, the base was.
Yeah.
Went over, I actually met up with a Viet who served at FOB 2.
Really?
Yeah. Joe Parner put me in contact with him. Real nice guy.
Yeah.
So I, rode a motorcycle into Kontum, called him, and he's like, "I'll send my son over." And son came pick me up, and we went back to the house. He lost his leg with a toe popper.
No.
Yeah. I had photos of that day when he lost his leg and they're carrying him out.
Get out.
Yeah. So when he's there, he had his sons there. He had 4 or 5 sons,
Yeah.
I said, "I don't know if you've ever seen this." So I pulled out the photo, gave it to him. He started crying. All the kids are taking pictures. That's my dad. That's my dad. So it was kind of cool. Whoa. And then the son the next day took me out. He's like, "Do you want to see Doc Toe?" which was one of Kontum's launch sites.
Sure.
I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So we got on our motorcycles. We rode out there, and he kept standing up, looking over. I'm like, "Where the hell are we going?" And finally he pulls in. He goes, "This is it." And sure as hell, there was 2 landing strips.
Yeah.
So I'm walking between them, and I'm kind of kicking the dirt, and there's a GI sandbag sitting right there, So it's just still sitting there after all these years. And they use the airstrips now to dry coffee beans. Coffee's a big thing in Vietnam now.
Sure.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. It was a good time. I definitely like to go back. I wanted to go see Dien Bien Phu and that. I did go to Khe Sanh, and when you get there and you look around, it's like, who the hell thought about putting a base here?
Yeah.
This is the stupidest place to put a base. Just dumb. But it was neat. And then we rode down the road a little bit, and I seen a scrap metal dealer. So I pulled in there, and pidgin English type thing. And the guy points over to a pile of shell fragmentation, about the size of a VW bus. And he's, basically that's what it's come out of the ground this year.
Yeah.
And it's still finding fragmentation, and stuff. And then he comes out of the back room with an M16, and he's like, pointing on, "Whoa, no work, no work." I don't care.
Yeah, don't point.
Don't point,
Yeah.
And it was neat. I mean, it was neat. M16. It came out of the dirt at Khe Sanh, and he had all kinds of parts and stuff that had been pulled out, but I got a couple pieces of shell fragmentation I brought back with me and stuff.
Wow.
So it's neat. Again, it's neat history, and they have about I don't know, maybe 400 feet of the trench line left. It's like a little museum area. The rest is all coffee fields. So they have like a little mini museum there. The FOB 3, where the SOG base was, that's all kind of gone. But they, it's enough to show people what the Marines.
Sure, and then they had the Khe Sanh village, which was like a half a click away, or a click away.
Yeah, it's pretty much all gone now.
That too, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of gone. It was interesting because when I met the gentleman's son, I kept trying to say, Montagnard. He didn't understand what I was saying. And finally, one of his friends comes over, and he was wearing a Montagnard bracelet. And Montagnards. I wanted to go see their camp, And okay, tomorrow. And then we went over there, and we drove in there. It kind of reminded me of
You're going back to the 18th century.
More or less, it looked like an Indian reservation.
Really?
Yeah, it was, really kind of run down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is interesting. The people were friendly. still friendly. But, and they got all these monuments where, the Vietnamese and the Montagnards are friends and all this stuff. So it was kind of interesting, which actually brings me to another story. I remember talking to a guy who was with the DOD.
Right.
In 1974, he was there doing something. And he said, I'm driving down the road. He said, all of a sudden I see this Montagnard leading an elephant out of the jungle. And he's like, oh, my God, what a picturesque moment,
Yeah.
So he said, I pull over my Jeep. I get out my camera. I'm taking pictures of this guy walking towards me with, guiding this elephant, in a loincloth and stuff. And he's like, man, this just takes me back,
Yeah.
The guy walks up to him and goes, you lost? It turns out the Indian worked up at CC and Danang, and after they closed, he went back to his village, but spoke perfect English, He's
No.
like, yeah, you lost? The guy was stunned, So, again, great stories you kind of talk to different guys about, because we were still trying to keep the war going. We're approaching Congress with all kinds of, there's petroleum there, and there's this, there's that, and, trying to keep the war going.
Mm-hmm.
And, but we were done. The government was done, so we were out,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we were out. And, it's a shame. It's just it's a real shame.
So get back to the early days when it was still setting up. Some of the earlier recon teams, some of the teams that you've documented, what kind of some of the early teams that stick out in your mind? Like we have Dick Meadows with his team out of Khartoum, getting 13 POWs on different missions.
Yeah, and again, you kind of look back, as a historian, it's like, geez, if I was to serve in SOG, what time frame would I want to be there?
Oh, yeah.
So you got to remember, in 1965, the NVA weren't expecting you.
Right.
They weren't expecting you to be in Laos. So you can go in and poke around.
And our guys were literally walking in. This is before it had King bees inserted.
Absolutely. So you're poking around. The NVA really aren't expecting you, especially if you got inserted by King bee or because you're further in.
Yeah.
And you could walk around, and the NVA really weren't expecting you. Disadvantages. You only had radio contact twice a day.
Right.
At noon and when you set into your RON. So, afternoon, if you made contact, you were running all night because they didn't have covey in the air.
Right.
Constantly.
Sure.
To support you. So you would be running all day, a running gunfight. Secondly, in the early days, they were really enforcing, you couldn't take Car 15, you had to carry Swedish K, which is, 9mm round. Good weapon, but in the jungle.
Fired from the open bolt.
You fired from an open bolt. So there wasn't a support system if you got in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a disadvantage. But, again, in the early days, the NVA weren't expecting you. So you walk out and snatch 2 or 3 of them, be gone type
Sure.
thing. So versus, the NVA were watching what you guys did and learning different tactics to go against you guys, So, by the time, you were there, they knew, we're going to make this team. We're going to make contact with this team. They're going to light us up. And then the world's going to come to an end because they're going to be bringing in all kinds of air assets,
Sure. And by that time, the NVA were training up battalions.
Absolutely.
Of SOG Recon team hunt teams just to come out and look for us.
Correct. That's actually documented in a book. What was it? Why Didn't You Get Me Out, I think is the name of the book.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, there was a POW.
Yeah, I've heard that title before. I haven't read the book.
He was a POW. He was held in Laos at a jungle camp. And every morning they'd have to go out to get water and clean out their poop buckets or whatever.
Right.
And they'd go down to this creek bed. And they walked down to the creek bed. And, of course, you got, the NVA guarding you. And they noticed GI boots tracks in the mud.
No kidding.
It was a SOG team. It had come that close to.
Whoa.
So I think he wound up escaping, if I recall correctly. But that's how they figured out. Once they saw the tracks, it took about 24 hours to bring in a counter recon team to start tracking that team.
Right.
That's kind of how that intelligence came about with that. And that's why, again, Singlaub and CISO started dropping jungle boots all over North Vietnam or all over the trail, Ho Chi Minh Trail. They didn't want to use, they didn't get good ones, so they went to the medical facilities for wounded GIs where you cut off the boots.
Yeah.
Grabbed up all those boots and would drop them all along the trail.
Part of PSYOPs?
Part of PSYOPs, hoping the NVA would wear them. They were better jungle boots than they had, So you'd see these footprints and, it'd be like, okay, well, we don't know if that's ours or not. So it was a good idea. It was a real good idea.
Yeah.
And, back to the Russians, Khantum was notorious for, at one point in time, the Americans would dye their uniforms black.
Right.
Because there was a rumor that the Russians were wearing black uniforms. So that's why the Americans started doing it. So if the NVA seen them, they'd be like, it gave you that couple seconds,
Sure, pause.
A pause. Are those Russians or what are they? So, yeah, that's why. You've seen that a lot at Khantum. You didn't see it so much up north.
No.
Y'all did a lot of spray painting.
Some of the guys did, yeah.
Yeah, spray painting the uniforms. It's smart. You know what I mean? It was a great
Broke
camouflage. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was a great camouflage. So, and then, there's a whole history of that too. But, and again, which is kind of cool, if you look at the World War II airborne jump jacket, that is identical to the U.S. Army uniform during Vietnam. It's just lighter material.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, if you look at it. And then you look at the modifications you guys did where, basically the waist pockets were worthless because you had a field belt on.
Sure.
So y'all took those pockets off and mounted them up on your sleeves.
Then we had the ones in between the pockets.
Back pockets, yes.
Yeah.
And you look at the modern uniform today. Sleeves are up here.
They got it.
Or the pockets are up here, So it's amazing that they took that stuff,
Sure.
SOG, there'll never be another unit like SOG.
No.
It just won't, I mean, CAG's great. They're cool. They followed y'all's SOPs and modified it for their own stuff, But again, it's great history, But there'll never be another unit like SOG, and that's just the reality to it. They just
the timing and the war,
the freedom that y'all were given,
sure,
to do. But, you want explosives? Yeah, right there. Take as many as you want, So, and it's amazing. You look at photos of you guys, and you got. You're in your bunk, white phosphorus grenade sitting there,
just hanging there. Yeah.
Just hanging there. Your kit's still there, I mean, claymores are still rigged. No problem. You know what I mean? So, it's amazing, and today the Army would get all butthurt about all that stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they would lose their crap. You know what I mean? So it's amazing what y'all guys did, what y'all pulled off. And to be honest with you, as much alcohol was consumed. There weren't that many, accidental discharges or negligent discharge or whatever the hell they want to call it today.
We had the one SF medic that came in once. It was to our hooch. He's got to remain nameless, he picked up the 9mm Swedish K, and he forgot that it fired from the open bolt. He always carried the car. So he fired off a few rounds and went through the officers' quarters from our hooch through it didn't hit anybody. And like 2 weeks later, he came back. Spider had a new scope on his car 15. So he picked it up, checking it out, pulled the trigger, fired some rounds, full automatic, went through our hooch, another hooch, and he hit it in ditch. And the Sergeant Major Harris comes in and he goes, "You shot him, go fix him." But there's no alcohol involved. It's just a medic being a medic.
You talk to guys, they'd sit there in their bunks with a Silence 22 shooting rats on the rafters. I mean,
or it'd be like Lou DeSetta at Caisson. He would put out cheese so the rats would come in. Then he'd shoot them with his 45.
Lou.
Driving Pat Watkins crazy.
Well, I talked to another guy who was in A camp.
Yeah.
And I won't go in there. Pete would be all in an uproar. But yeah, I mean, there was just stuff you did. And again, you're young. The amount of responsibility that was put on you guys.
Yeah.
Especially like your generation. You came in, you were young, you're in your young 20s,
Sure.
And, here's a weapon, and
young and dumb.
Anything you want, and you're willing to do this, we're willing to back you up.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that more people didn't get killed. Just
now, if they capture you, you will have plausible deniability.
It's amazing. It just, again, it's amazing that unit, what came out of that unit.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And that was one of the things I talked to when I was with the Chief SOGs about.
Sure.
And they're like, look, you had to cut them some slack. They were willing to do what nobody else wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, and in your time frame is interesting because that's when you're starting to get a lot of younger guys.
Sure.
The older guys they've run their time. I'm done. I'll take a job doing something else. And then it came up to you younger guys. Who did it.
A lot of E4s.
A lot of E4s.
Sure.
So, and that's one thing about in my books. I always try, especially if you interview the guy, because I always got tired of always hearing this crap, Vietnam vets, they're stressed out, they got problems, they got this, they got that. You guys came home, you just moved on with your life,
Most of them,
you put it behind you and moved on, so this whole drunken drug addict thing, I don't find that at all. That's just an excuse, it's a crutch, for the media, so I always try to, last chapter of the guy's write-up, you interview him, what he did post-military life.
Right.
And again, they all went on with their lives, did different things. And again, you went into the newspapers, which is great. You know what I mean? It's just amazing how you guys came out of this and went about your way. You just kind of...
So in your books, you document going from the weapons early days to later on, like people like Nick Brockhausen, the guys at CCN, going in heavy with RPDs. Yes. Maybe one or two guys carrying RPDs.
Oh, yeah. Well, you had the death machine where they cut down a M60.
Right.
And then they put a big can on your back, and that didn't work out too well. The RPDs was a big thing, the cut down RPD. It's a good weapon.
Sure.
Absolutely. It's a real good weapon.
They liked it better than M60.
Yeah, and then some teams were actually carrying RPGs, which I thought was interesting versus a M79.
I know. Because it just seems so bulky.
Well, that was like when they put the 203 on the car. I was like...
The 203 was a grenade launcher attached to a Car 15.
Correct. So I actually talked to a couple 10s, and I'm like, well, did you carry them? And it was 'cause a couple guys said, no, they're kind of clunky. I didn't like it, and I had an M79 guy.
Yeah.
What do I need that
for? And I had my M79. That's why I didn't. But Lynn Black had it.
Lynn did, yeah. And it's kind of a clunky thing to load, especially in a combat situation, trying to remember how to do all this, So, again, it was another thing that you kind of talk about and you see different guys and the way they did things. And each team had its own way of operating, your IA drills and everything else. So every team was kind of different, And, again, it was lessons learned from that. Donnie actually printed a copy of it, Lessons Learned, and that went out to LERP units and stuff like that in the 80s.
And they had... like now, through your books, going back and reading stuff that came out in 69 and 70, and when I came back to Vietnam, the Sergeant Major Hobbs had Lynn and I put together an SOP book.
Correct.
And Lynn drew up these pictures and all kinds of SOPs, everything from just how you got dressed up, what you carried, where you carried it, using the Swiss seat. Then they came out with the McGuire rig and then eventually gone to stable.
Right. Yeah.
But that's all part of the evolution of getting pulled out of the jungle in the middle of a firefight. Because the helicopter can't land. But that little things that were developed, and then they're finessed to today.
Well, the stable rig's actually interesting. I actually talked to a guy. Those were actually rigger made. Riggers made those. And that's how that kind of came about. Later on, the Army's like, oh, this is a great concept. But, then we got to get the Army involved after the war.
Right, of course.
And they have this whole research and development thing. And one of the guys was there who rode Stabo,
Oh, is that right?
He was talking to him.
Yeah.
You're talking to these engineers, and they're like, oh, well, the problem is it's a nylon. It's nylon. So, if you get in a spin, that nylon's going to rub together and melt. And the guy's looking at it, he's like, if you're in that kind of spin, you got other problems, but so post-war, they used the Stavro rig post-war, but they sewed this, like ground padding in between the two nylon straps. I mean, just typical Army overthinking things.
Yeah.
You know, just typical. Because you had small, medium, and large. That's what the riggers were making.
No kidding.
Yeah. Actually, in a lot of them, you'll see in the crotch area,
Yeah.
it'll be spray painted, small, medium, or large.
Yeah, I never used it. I just kept my old Swiss seat for one reason or another.
I've talked to different guys. Some guys like this, some guys like that. Some guys said to me, as a historian looking, is like, well, it makes more sense just to have it replace your LBE with the Stabo.
Well, plus, you know, in terms of common sense, everybody should have it. So if you're wounded going out, or if you hit a tree and you get knocked unconscious, at least you're going to stay in the rig.
Exactly.
Whereas we lost people from the Swiss seats.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And even from the McGuire rigs. Just tragic stuff.
It really was.
And of course, the McGuire rig had that handle up top.
Yes.
And we had people like Dave Gordon that just had shoulder surgery because he passed out.
Yeah. You know, I mean.
But he hung on, and it saved his life.
It's amazing. Well, Sammy Hernandez, he got shot out of his. Well, they don't know if the rope got shot or if it got cut.
Right.
But he was up ways, and he came back down. We did lose a lot of people out of the McGuires. Swiss seat wasn't too bad, but we still lost people out of it.
Particularly if you didn't hook the upper D ring.
D ring, yeah. Well, there was a couple instances where, only one rope came through, so they had to team up to get out, which I don't understand why the two Americans would team up in one rig. I would have grabbed one of the little people and, who weighs 100
Come
pounds.
back and try again.
Just snatch him, So, yeah, it was, again, the development of equipment, too, was interesting at that point in time. They had the soap dish claymores that they made out of little plastic Vietnamese soap dishes. They made little miniature claymores.
Right.
Great idea. Again, people don't think about all this stuff that's been proven. Proven to work. I mean,
sure.
It's great. Put a time pencil in, throw it on your back trail, and you got 4 or 5 of them for one full size claymore. But yeah, they did a lot of different weapons. I talked to guys. Some guys their point man would run an AK, obviously.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, so if he pops out on the trail
with an NBA uniform and everything.
Absolutely,
sure.
Smart idea.
Just try to get a few seconds advantage.
But most recon guys that I've talked to didn't care. They liked the Car-15.
Oh yeah.
Which makes sense. You carry a hell of a lot more ammunition with you.
Sure.
Versus an AK, So they started modifying stuff. Later on, you came out with larger magazines, 30-round magazines, which.
And Plaster and those guys figured out. They sent a letter and a check to somebody.
Yes.
Back in the States, hey, we want your 30-round mags.
Yes.
It wasn't even Colt. It was an independent company. And they sent it back. So all the guys at CCC, at least they had one 30-round mag for initial contact. And we're still dicking around with the 20s.
And again, it was one of those things that the NBA weren't expecting.
Yeah.
They figure you're going to shoot off your
first 18.
Your first 18 and it's done.
Yeah.
Well, now we've got another 10 or 12,
Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
And they actually, they would actually tape a string to those because that's how important they were. So when you dropped it, it was actually connected. Yeah, exactly. You drop it and keep going. Well, it was like the RPD. Great weapon.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get the belts, the ammunition belts. So it was a big thing. If you took the RPD out and you got in contact, you're picking up those belts as you're running along.
Sure.
Because they were.
I remember Eldon talking about that.
Yeah, very hard. And then they took on the front gate of the drum.
Yeah.
They took floor linoleum, and cut out a little circle and put it in there so when you're walking, the bullets were quieter, they weren't hitting metal on metal.
Right.
So they did that too.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Again, you talk to guys, and the stuff they come up with.
The evolution. So how many people took a bow and arrow into the
I know of one. I know Rob Graham.
Rob Graham.
Rob Graham. Great guy. Fantastic guy. I actually asked him, what the hell happened to the bow? And he's like, I gave it to somebody,
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, there's just all kinds of neat stuff that when you talk to, Shriver carried a 44
Magnum?
44 Magnum or something of that nature. It was a bunker buster.
And over time, he carried so many different weapons with him. He's got pictures of him with all kinds of stuff.
Well, the 44 got sent home because of a private weapon.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and his father pawned it.
No kidding.
Yeah, his stepfather's, pawned it.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and then, then you get into the again, CISO,
Sure.
Counterinsurgency Support Office, they needed pistols. So that's when they, he went out and acquired all these 9mm Browning high powers.
That's when we saw them.
Yeah.
When they came in the base. Yeah.
And then, of course, the problem was everybody's like, I'm taking this home because it was a foreign weapon. So everybody just signed out capture papers and, combat lost that bad boy and, brought him home, So there's a lot of those cool things,
Oh, my. Yeah.
So, and it's interesting, again, talking to different guys. Did you carry a secondary weapon? And again, everybody did things differently. I remember interviewing one guy at a Contum, and he said, I never buckled my rig. And he said, his LBE said, I never buckled it. He said, it was uncumbersome. He said, and you're walking slow. He said, why would you have to have it buckled?
Okay.
Yeah. And because he was one of the ones that pointed out, he said, because he carried his Browning high power on his pants belt with his SOG knife. And he says, in case you got to dump your rig.
Sure.
He said, at least you got something, So I was like, that's a good idea, So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, again, look at the belt y'all guys created from the little AC-11 straps y'all made. Right. Great idea. It came out of SOG, you know what I mean? What a great idea. It works as a tourniquet. It can work to get you out. Type thing. So, and now, nowadays it's a fashion statement. So, you see them everywhere.
Fashion statement.
Things are like that, so.
So then getting back to is some of the other recon teams that come to mind for either historic or for a mission like RT Kansas near the end?
RT Kansas mission there at the end, when they got overrun, is actually on an audio.
Right.
There's actually a great audio of that. And I've had a lady who actually transcribed it. And it's interesting to listen to.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I've only heard a little bit of it.
I'll send it to you.
Sure.
It's amazing listening to all these different things going on. The pilots, the covey, the guy on the ground.
Yeah.
What's going on. And trying to, first of all, everybody's accent's funny as hell. You got northern guys talking to southern boys and, where you want this stuff, So it's interesting to listen to. But yeah, Kansas is, at the end, CCN was doing these crazy things of putting these guys out on mountaintops in obvious sight.
Sure.
Of the NVA, trying to draw the NVA in on them. And, of course you'd have Spectre all night working the area, but you're putting guys out there. And that's what happened with Kansas.
Yeah.
They put them on this hilltop, which was an old fire base. It was an old artillery fire base or something like that. And, they get in and start digging out some of those bunkers, knowing the NVA are going to come that night because they know they've seen you come in.
Sure.
And the NVA, why the NVA pushed it, I have no idea.
Because it was in or near Oscar 8, right?
There was several. I think that one was.
Yeah.
But it's like if you just let them be for a couple of days, they're going to leave. You know how many soldiers that got tossed up in the meat grinder.
Oh yeah.
Trying to charge up that hill with Spectre flying around and all the other air assets. Loading it. I mean, millions of dollars are spent on our end.
Sure.
How many lives were cost there? So I never understood why CCN was doing that outside just to harass the NVA at that point in time. I don't know. We did the last book, or maybe it was this book. We did it's 15 Anaconda,
right?
Where we did the story of Hickory.
Oh, is that right?
Or John Caviani,
and Jones,
and that was a very interesting thing too when we started researching that, because we actually got a hold of the document where Belfi put John in for the Medal of Honor. Excuse me a second. I don't know what the hell it is. Where Belfi actually at that period of time put him in for the Medal of Honor, but we were pulling out of Vietnam, so it just kind of got washed over. Everybody thought John was dead. Nobody knew he was POW.
Right.
They all thought he was dead. Well, all of a sudden, Operation Homecoming kicks off, bringing back POW, and John's name pops up on a roster. Really? Yeah. And the government's like, who's John Campiani? And they started looking through and realized he got somebody had actually put him in for the Medal of Honor. And they're like, oh, shit. So they fast-tracked it.
It's a double oh shit.
Yeah. It was oh shit. So they fast-tracked it.
Yeah.
And that's how he wound up getting. Because it's interesting, there were several other guys who were non-SF up on that hilltop. There were some
ASA guys.
Well, the ASA actual equipment was actually monitored by SF guys. You have to go in every day and change out these cartridges. That's all they did.
Sure.
But you had a lot of guys with the Igloo White program, with the mechanized units, the sensors,
right?
Sensor readers, who were up there too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
They're running from there.
They were running out of there.
No kidding.
So they would, monitor the sensors from there.
So for the benefit of our listening audience, the Igloo program was...
Igloo Whites were just like trail sensors.
Right.
And there were several different types. It's also known as the McNamara fence.
Yeah.
They're like radio antennas that look like shrubs or bushes or twigs.
Yeah.
And they'd have this huge metal dart. And they'd be dropped out of airplanes and helicopters, and they'd plunge into the ground, and it would send signal. The vibrations of this thing would send signal to passing
of
planes.
anything moving. Pick up animals, people.
Well,
trucks,
that was the problem.
tanks.
There's no way of telling if it's an elephant or a tank. So I'm sure a lot of elephants got wasted. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
America, we were coming up with all kinds of crazy stuff during the Vietnam War. I actually talked to a guy recently who was talking about the Igloo White program. That program alone cost more than the whole atomic bomb of World War II.
No.
Yeah, we spent more money on that. And they actually have a great display of them at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
They actually have a really great display of them.
Did they include the ones like my first two missions with Idaho? We inserted sensors. Their Air Force sensors had a central unit, then coaxial cables that went out all along the road, and they had antennas on the end. And then anything that moved, they allegedly recorded. They had to bury everything except for the antennas.
Different type of sensor.
Yeah.
Something else they were probably playing with. But
sure.
For the most part, they were just the aerial dropped intrusion devices. I think what they call them, which is a McNamara fence. And actually, in Vietnam, you go to any museum, they have a bunch of them on display. We figured this out. They had little, they call them dog do. It's supposed to be monkey turd.
Yeah.
It was covered in peat moss. That they would lay out. Actually, great side story to that. They were testing those in Florida.
No.
Yeah, at Eglin, and a hurricane came through. And they washed up all over the shore, all over the beaches, and people are like, "What the hell is this?" And the military's like, "Oh, that's ours. Call us if you find one. It won't
if
explode.
you find a turd, call us."
Yeah, I remember getting my first one. I took it to my dentist. I knew my dentist. I'm like, "Hey, can you X-ray this for me?" And he did. He's pretty cool. And they had other ones that looked like rocks. Again, it looked like rocks, and that's another kind of thing, another sidebar type thing. They had gravel mines that were dropped by planes.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they didn't tell people on the ground
about the gravel
mines. One guy brought them back to FOB 4, matter of fact.
No.
I think it was 4.
Okay.
Pretty sure. He was out. They found a whole bunch of them. They picked them all up, threw them in a rucksack, brought them back to the compound.
No.
Opened up the ruck. We found, because they thought they were like, the moisture absorbent packets.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they bring them back, and they're like, "Do you know what that is?" And he's like, "Yeah. I figured, we could, there'd be some type of intelligence here."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, those are mines." And one guy picked one up and threw it against the wall, and it blew up. I got a picture of it. It blew a hole in the wall.
No.
Yeah. So you talk to guys about this kind of crazy stuff, it's like, you got to be kidding me,
Yeah.
But again, that's where intelligence wasn't passed down, and I actually did some research on those because it's kind of interesting on how that happens. The canister had like Freon in it. So when it released, they would arm at a certain temperature when they're falling. Yeah. That's how they armed. Yeah. Wow. So, again, great things. Another great side story. The guy's got a bunch of warm beer, Yeah, they're like, no, we want cold beer. So they put him in rocket tubes on a Cobra. He went up to altitude.
Is that right?
Froze the beer, came back down. There's a couple $1,000 worth of beer there now, but they were cold, So so there's always cool stories. Again, you talk to vets and the little anecdotal stories they come out with is just amazing.
My God,
it's just absolutely amazing what they did.
Sure.
So back to Kaviani. So that kind of got overlooked until he came out on the POW list. And then everybody got, last couple of years, a couple other guys who were there got awards, silver stars and bronze stars. Through
the SOA, we've had those. The first one I remember was back either 10 or 11, because I was president from 11 through 14. And we had a couple of awards and decorations. One time, Colonel Donlan was there, then Eldon presented, and Jack Singlaub.
Correct.
To a lot of awards and decorations to aviators as well as our guys for medals that should have, and awards and decorations should have received in Vietnam. They did.
Now, according to Sadler,
right,
Colonel Sadler, he told me when they were closing down, there was a C-130 loaded with a lot of paperwork, records, awards, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That crashed.
Whoa.
Over Khartoum. That plane crashed, which I do know because I did some study. Later on, they came out with a thing called, it was under SMAG, but it was a Special Mission Force, SMF.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the last armed wing of SOG at the end, and they were special missions. They're the ones who went in after John Paul Vann when he was lost.
Right.
And they went in after that plane that went down, and it was pretty burned up. But according to Sadler, those had a lot of SOG records on there. So I'm sure that was a lot of awards that hadn't done. You also got to remember, too, what happened, it's very hard sometimes to track people because early on y'all were under MACV, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam.
Right.
Well, in March 71, when 5th Group comes home, MACV, what are we going to do with these SOG guys? Where are we going to put them? So that's when they created, they fell up under USARV, which is U.S. Army Vietnam. So we have good records when it was MACV, but when it became USARV, we lose a lot of good records. It's hard to get. It's real hard to get. So I think a lot of guys, and again, when the war was over, I think everybody just wanted to wash their hands of it and walk away.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, you had the record-keeping side of it all.
Right.
It's just huge. People don't realize. I mean, we always heard that there are 10 people in Vietnam. One would do combat, and the other 10 would be support, which is just a lot of work logistics that we've talked about today because without CISO...
Rear echelon people. It was like 1 to 9 or 10 people per Vietnam. And I think today it's 1 in 7.
1 in 7?
It's getting down there. But, but again, it's just amazing of the unit's history and what happened. And you guys came home and went about your lives, and you didn't really think about it. I remember talking to one kid who, in the 80s, his first sergeant was in SOG. And he said, I was intimidated by him. I'd go in there and his plaques would be on the wall. And, SOG was always, hush, hush, secret stuff, type thing. And he's like, he was a big guy. He says, you're real intimidating. He wore a big C ring, and, Rolex watch. And, so.
Of course.
Yeah, again, it's great history. And if you don't document it, it's going to be lost, And,
so from your history, as you look back today, what kind of missions or two to stick out? Anything unique besides huge firefights coming out under fire, which would be the SOP for you?
There's a lot of different missions when you talk to the guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you did Halo. That was kind of the brainchild there. That kind of came around.
And even in your book, we were told it was 5, but your book documented 6.
Yes, there were 6.
Yeah.
6, and it got canceled last minute. It was done, and then we did several combat jumps.
12 or 13?
I think it was 12 or 30. Yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
because a couple were in country supporting A teams that were under attack, like at the not Docto Playrang. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was a fifth group thing.
Right.
But we were when we started kind of research. Matter of fact, Gary Robb, who was on a static line,
Sure.
he had contacted me and said, I'm trying to put together a list because we didn't have anything.
Right.
And I said, all right. And I had talked to guys before, and Gary who were involved in combat jumps, and Gary didn't know about them. And I'm like, no, look, I've seen the documents, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Rattler was one of the first ones, RT Rattler, and I talked to the guys, and again, I remember talking to the 1-0, didn't mention it. I talked to him about his whole history.
No.
Wrote it down his history. Okay, well, who'd you serve with?
Yeah.
Wilkinson, I think Wilkinson or somebody. I think it was Wilkinson was his name.
Or Wilcox? No.
No, it was Wilkinson.
Okay.
So it was Bobby Richardson was the team leader, and I believe his 1-1 was Wilkinson. So I interviewed the team leader, didn't mention a damn thing. So I call his 1-1, talking to him, and he mentions the jump. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, we did this jump, blah, 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 on this date. Matter of fact, I've got a citation for it,
Yeah.
a letter of commendation. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, hang up the phone, call back Bobby, and I'm like, hey, is this guy full of shit?
Did we forget a little
remember
detail?
Things different, and he's like, oh yeah, we did that. I mean, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. 400 feet without a reserve, because reserve's useless at that point in time anyways.
Sure.
Yeah, they just jumped out to there was a big marine operation. So they basically wanted Pathfinders down there.
No kidding.
So somehow they got a hold of CCN and said, you got anybody crazy enough to do this? And they're like, yeah, we got a couple.
Yeah.
Take your pick, And then there's also other times where I interviewed guys. And again, people got to realize in the books, you got to give it a little leeway. You're talking 50, 60-year memories.
Sure.
When did you come on the team? So you're doing your best to get around about the months right.
Yeah.
So forgive me if you're a month or two off. That's just the way it's going to be. There's no way of
and you're
telling
honest about it in your books. You say, I interviewed Joe Bip the Ragman. He came on the team February, March. He was there until June or July.
Yeah, you're trying to do as
But
best
at least you're
you
honest
can.
about it. At least you get the flavor of the guys who were there.
Yeah, because
get it.
There's
You
no
document it.
record. I wish they had it. This guy was on this team. And I'm sure
Right.
those records did exist at one time, but nobody bothered keeping them,
That's why people like Steve Sherman, who on his own initiative would go back to vets and get
Absolutely.
their records personally.
That Steve was a major factor in everything.
Yeah.
And he that guy, he's got one of the minds. It just
Oh, I know.
it works like a watch. He is so far ahead of you sometimes.
That's true.
But I give him full credit. Because when I started this project, I went through his books and kind of started going through and outlining who was on what team. And
yeah.
I'd call Steve, and he's like, "Why don't you call the guy? Here's his number. And I'd call the guy and talk to the guy."
That's a good Steve imitation.
Yeah. Steve, I love Steve to death.
What'd you call the guy?
He'd be very gruff sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't.
He's always busy.
Well, he's smart, and and I'm
is.
dumb when it comes to computers. And Steve is light years ahead of me.
Oh, I know.
Which should be reversed. You know what I mean? He's like, "Don't you know how to do that?" No, I don't. No, I'm an old pen and paper kind of guy. So yeah. So when you're talking to those guys, I remember talking to one guy who was on Arizona, and they did a jump, and I said, who was your 1-1? And he put another guy in his place mentally.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you got to be cautious of, because then, of course, I get off the phone with him. I call his 1-2, and I'm like, the guy he told me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Hey, you didn't tell me about the jump." And he's like, "What jump?" I wasn't on that jump. That wasn't me. And you're like,
no.
Okay. So then you got to call the 1-0 back and say, "Hey, look, I just talked to Michael. He said it wasn't him." And he's like, "I'm looking at him as we're in the door right now in my head. We're ready to go out, and I'm grabbing hold of it. It's a go. He says, "I'm looking at him." And sure as shit, doing some more research, I actually found a guy, Chris Giskelis.
Wow.
And, and then we met at the SOA.
Yeah.
And I said, this is the guy. And he goes, I don't know why in my mind I changed that out,
Yeah.
And again, you got other guys who, for whatever reason, don't like the guy. Or, he was never on my team.
Yeah, there's not always happy times together.
It is. Some people didn't work out.
These A-type personalities.
And I'm like, look, I got photos of you two guys together. Well, okay. And it's, so again, you got different type of guys who it's just amazing how it worked.
Some could be idiosyncratic.
Very, very, yes. Yeah. And again, it was just, great times. But again, you got alpha male personalities, all trying to mesh.
You got characters like Nick Brockhausen running around CCM with his German helmet and an underpants, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you had other guys, wearing Montagnard loincloths and, just crazy stuff, And again, the officers. Could you imagine being an officer?
No.
And having to.
How far? Think about that way. Your heart goes out to the officers for a change.
You do. What are you going to do? I mean, you're in a bad situation because these are the only guys that are going to do this, and you have to get operations done. So you got to be willing to cut them some slack. And that's one thing that really kind of bothered me about Afghanistan and Iraq. No alcohol. No whorehouses. Type thing.
The basics.
As a matter of fact, I know a priest.
A priest.
A priest or a chaplain. Who actually wrote Bush during the war and said, morale's down. You need to open bars and whorehouses. And sent it to him. Hey, more power to him.
My gosh.
So, so that always bothered me about the Middle East. And, it's like, no, they're still American boys,
Oh, yeah.
And, taking a year of their life. Let them unwind a bit.
Yeah.
So you got that. And I actually read a psychological profile that they actually did on an A team over there early on.
Oh, really?
All the shrinks were really into it because they didn't understand how you had all these alpha males. I'll get you a copy of it. It's a great read because the shrinks went over there and they're like, you've got all these alpha male personalities, but there is an established pecking order, which was rank.
Yeah.
And how this functions in an A team.
Yeah.
And it's a really good read about it. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool that they actually picked up on that, So, and again, you're dealing with guys who are coming on your team who would be an officer. And your rank means nothing here.
No.
Now it's a different pecking order.
Sure.
It's who's been on the ground, And a couple times, the upper brass tried to change that. We want officers to lead. Well, then you got people killed, and then they're like, well, let's go back to what worked. Yeah, again, why are you trying to fix something that isn't broke? Type thing. That's just typical Army.
Yeah, because at FOB 1, that never was a problem, and then 1-0 had final say on who came on the team. That was it, period.
Yeah.
We rejected a few folks.
Yeah, and you also got to remember, too, SOG was a classified operation. And that goes back to Jim Hetrick's team leader, Ted Braden.
Yeah.
Ted, for whatever reason, Ted had been in the country a long time. And
is that right?
Yeah, Ted had been in the country a long time. And he was a 1-0 of Colorado. You had him, Hetrick, and J.D. Bath.
Right.
And he was older. He was probably late 30s, 40s. And J.D. said, man, every morning he'd get up and he'd put a board against the wall and do, inverted sit-ups, every morning. And then he'd break out the cognac and drink cognac all day. And
really?
He was always, they're not paying us enough. They're not paying us enough. Mercenaries are making much more than we are, in Israel. And blah, blah, blah. And J.D. was still kind of young. He's like, yeah, okay, boss,
Yeah, anything you say.
So they go on a mission one time. And it turns out Viet gets killed by Braden. So they have to go back, and all of a sudden, Braden has to report to Saigon. So Braden leaves. He just disappears. Nobody knows what the hell happened to him. Well, it turns out he went AWOL. And they found him in Africa working as a mercenary.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, they bring him back. They arrested him. He had actually taken the identity of a guy who was killed at an A-team early on with him, took his identity, and that's what he became. And so they bring him back to the States, you know, bring him up in charge, and he's like, let's do this. And they're like, you're pretty confident in that. And he's like, oh, hell yeah, because you're going to ask me what unit I served in Vietnam, and I'm just going to have to tell everything. And the Army's like, oh, good point. Why don't you just sign these papers and process out of the Army? So yeah.
So then, have you heard anything about the other rumor about Braden after he got out about being D.B. Cooper?
I've heard that. Yeah.
What do you think, though? I mean,
if you look at the photo,
is that right?
Of Braden,
yeah.
If you look at him, and he was nutty enough to do it.
Absolutely,
he was nutty enough to do it. He wound up disappearing, and then he winds up in an old men's magazine. He walks in. He knew the editor or something, and he walked in and basically sold his story.
Really?
Yeah, and I forgot, it's in the book. Men's magazine's gone now, but yeah. I've heard the D.B. Cooper angle. I mean, he doesn't look like him. I mean, but Braden was from everybody I talked to. He's like, yeah, he would have done it. No doubt about it. He would have done it. So, I give the guy credit for pulling it off. But
sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's just insane to me. You know what
I mean? I know,
but,
absolutely.
But again, it's funny. Back in those days, you could carry guns on planes, and how far we've come. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You guys are bringing home SKSs and stuff, and throwing it in the luggage, and not thinking much of it. So, yeah. But yeah, so you had him. He was another character. You had a lot of Hawaiians, which they called pineapples at the time,
right?
Who were excellent soldiers.
Like Jim Wheeler, my God.
Oh yeah, Wheeler. He's a big dude.
That
boy's big
and good.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to fight him.
No.
I don't
even
care.
Today.
I don't care how old he is. You know what I mean? He's got hands like a pitcher's mitt. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he's a great guy. I really enjoyed Jim. Matter of fact, recently found one of the guys he served with recently, and different guy, I didn't give his name, but yeah, he was at South, went to North. The war ended. He wound up in Africa, fought in Rhodesia, and then South Africa.
Wow.
And there was a couple guys like that too, who did that. Kevin Smith, he did it also. The guys were geared up for war, and all of a sudden,
George Bacon. That's where he lost Bacon was Rhodesia, right?
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, when Walker got out of the military, he went to work for the agency, and he was actually assigned to the area Baker was lost. And he was pissed when we were talking about it, because he's like, if they would have told me, I could have recovered his body.
No.
Yeah. I could have recovered his body because he knew the people.
Sure.
Walker was a crazy guy. I mean, his mind worked in a different level, but yeah, he was out there for a long time. He worked in Africa, but he was agency at the time. But a lot of guys went over to Rhodesia and South Africa as mercenaries.
Sure.
So more power to them.
Well, then the others, we had the guys that would be forming up Delta Force.
Yes, absolutely.
We had Eldon and many others that came through. They went through that tough period of time from 1974 to 1979.
Peacetime militaries.
Oh, yeah.
That's a hard...
Reductions in force were horrible.
Clintons, teams were, having team funds.
They wanted to have... They had a couple SF groups that were shut down.
Yes.
During the Clinton administration.
Well, after Vietnam, it's interesting in talking to guys who stayed in the military.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to go back to the flagpole. Nobody wanted to go back to Bragg. Right. And it's like, okay, in Okinawa and Thailand were triple slotted. You had the 46th Company in Thailand. You had 1st Group in Okinawa, and they were triple slotted. They had more people who just didn't really have a job, but they didn't want to go back to Fayetteville. And a lot of people don't realize, good story, a lot of people don't realize there's a little SOG mini reunion down there in Panama with 7th Group. And Sadler was down there. Chief SOG Sadler. That was his next assignment. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I won't give you the two names, but good story. he had a fishing buddy, an SF guy. Well, there's two SF guys. One of them was, let's just say, seeing a local woman.
Sure.
And apparently she had a hell of a body, but her face wasn't that great. So they decided to give her a facelift.
No.
2 medics. So they bring her into the hospital on a weekend.
Yeah.
And these 2 medics did a facelift. Right?
Yeah.
So everything goes well. That's fine. A couple months later, he's tired of dating her. So he's like,
yeah,
you hit the road. She goes to the command to say, hey, your medic, he did my facelift and he promised me a boob job. And, he dumped me, but I still want my boob job. And the Army's like, what? And they're like, yeah, you're medics.
Oh,
and they're like, what medics? So they actually flew down the Surgeon General of the United States to view this woman.
No.
Yes, flew her down there. And he looked her over, came out of the room and said, there ain't no way 2 SF medics did that. It was that good.
No kidding.
Yeah. Again, crazy stories, just crazy ass stories. Yeah.
So then getting back to the Vietnam for a minute, any other operations like Strata? Because that went on for a while, but that was under SOG, correct?
It was. That came out of Monkey
NKP?
Mountain. There was actually 2 parts of it. There was part of it at Camp Longton,
right,
and another part at Monkey Mountain in Da Nang. And that was short-term target acquisition or something of that nature. And that was all Vietnamese at that point in time, Vietnamese teams that they were putting in. And I think they were putting them in up at the DMZ and stuff.
Well, north, because that's where sometimes they would launch out of NKP.
Right. Yeah. So
and they didn't report directly to Saigon until after the missions.
Yeah, exactly. Speedy Gaspard was part of that.
Absolutely. He was the OSC for a while.
I think
officer in charge.
I think he received DSC.
During one of the missions.
Star. Yeah, he went down and got a team that was really banged up.
Yeah.
He went down and got him. So I give Speedy credit for that.
Yeah.
You had Strata. You had the Borden program, which was... trying to think of the Borden program. You had Earth Angel, you had Borden program, and then there was another one.
The Ford one that came out, where they had the Ford, they'd have 2 facts that would fly.
Yeah,
Ford drum. Would fly.
Drum.
Ford drum.
Yep, Ford
and
drum.
And the second one would call in the ordnance.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Earth Angel was Chuhois who came in. Chu Hoi, they surrendered. They were North Vietnamese soldiers.
Become training.
They came in. Hey, look, if you work for us, we'll give you a job and citizenship. If your mission goes well.
Yeah.
So they would, and what they would do is dress them back in NVA uniforms, teach them basic military intelligence gathering techniques, and they would reinsert them up around the border area. And actually interviewed a guy who was a handler, if you will. And he said, what do we do? He said, we'd go in and we'd look at a map and see what units were in that AO, that area operations, what ground units were. And I would approach them and say, hey, look, and back then, remember, y'all had the SOG ID cards.
Right.
Basically said, you're to help this guy.
Yeah.
You'd show them the ID card and said, I need a ride. And you'd put your people on the APC or whatever was up that way, and y'all would go up there and you'd tell the commander stop, and your little people would jump off. They'd be wearing, American uniforms buttoned up, and then once they jumped off, they'd start stripping down. They'd be an NVA, and then they'd wander off into Laos or Cambodia. Hopefully, run into other NVA. Hey, we're lost. We don't know where we're going. What are we doing? Who are you? Type thing, gather information and come back and Chuhoy back and feed back the information. Matter of fact, CISO made copies of the North Vietnamese Army uniforms for this. And obviously some SOG guys started wearing them too.
Oh, yeah, our point man wore them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sidebar on that was talking to Ben Baker. He said, we couldn't figure out what the stamps were. Because inside, under the pocket flaps, there's stamps. On the back side of the pocket, there's stamps. In the back of the collar, there's stamps. Under the collar, there's stamps. Ben said, I can't tell you how many people had a very hard day, captured people, because he wouldn't explain to us what the stamps meant. And he's like, turns out those stamps were like one little hamlet made pockets, one hamlet made the collars, one hamlet made the cuffs, and then they were all assembled at this other area. But in order to get paid, it had to be stamped.
No.
Yeah. So a lot of people had a lot of bad days, you know.
Just trying to figure out something like that.
And Ben's like, you know, they'd be screaming, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then the NBA changed their tactics too, where they would roll up one pants leg, right or left or a sleeve. They did things to try and counter the Earth Angel programs. And then we had Borden Project, where they knew guys who volunteered to do this had just been captured. They knew that they were going to turn the minute you put them back on the ground. You know, they were going to go right back to the NBA.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the guys that they, you know, took uniforms and sewed maps and all kinds of stupid codes that meant nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and made the guy wear it and then dropped him off knowing he's hightailing it back to the NBA. And of course they're going to search him and find all this stuff, and he ain't going to have an answer. So he's going to have a bad day.
Yeah, real bad day.
You know, there was all kinds of projects going on. Camp Long Tom was actually pretty interesting. It was just, I want to say it was east of Saigon.
It was, right.
And it was a facility, but within the facility was a separate compound which ran these programs.
Sure.
And of course, Longton was 1-0 school,
reconnaissance team leaders,
reconnaissance team leaders course, and you also had a Halo school. You had a airborne school going there. For a short time, they actually had a Covey school.
Oh, is that right?
And an exploitation company school, which I thought was, or exploitation hatchet force company.
Hatchet force, yeah.
So there was a lot going on at that compound.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot going on at that compound. And that came out of Project Delta as a recondo school. Project Delta started their recondo school early to train their soldiers.
Okay.
And the problem was everybody else started finding out about it and saying, hey, can we send some guys, LRP units?
We had guys that went through it,
yes,
sure.
Especially your time. You either went to 1-0 school at Long Times that just started firing up, or you went to recondo school. There was only,
Well, the recondo would have been for the guys coming in country.
Right, but early on, SOG guys were running through recondo school at 5th Group.
Okay.
It's surprising, but was some, not Barkley, his running mate, a couple of guys. There was only like 2,000 graduates.
Art Driscoll?
Art Driscoll. Yeah, he went to recondo. As a matter of fact, Eldon Bardwell did too.
No kidding.
Yeah, Eldon did too.
Yeah,
he wore the recondo diamond. Yeah. Now, SOG again got smart, and they actually, in 68, they actually started a 1-0 classes at Bragg if you were slated for the projects.
Really?
Yeah, especially medical and that kind of stuff. 68, 69 time frame. And then by 1970, 71 time frame, if you were slated to go to the projects, they had a 1-0 school at Fort Bragg.
Yeah, and that's where Pat Watkins wound up, and all the instructors had never been in SOG.
Right, exactly.
It's like, what?
Yes. Typical Army. You know what I mean? Typical Army.
We'll put together a school with people that have never been there.
Yeah, and then you repeated the same thing when you went in country and went to 1-0 school. It was the exact same training, so you're just kind of like, okay. But yeah, Long Time was interesting. Again, you had the Halo school going.
Yeah.
Because once they fired off those, there was a lot more guys who were Halo qualified, but they just didn't form teams. Because once the first operations they considered to be successful, because they did get on the ground, they're like, oh, we want to do more of this. So they started running a lot of SOG guys through Halo school at Camp Longton.
Yeah, and then they had like the one with Team Manus. Manus, they were all RT Idaho guys.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole team.
And it's interesting, I should point out, and especially in the last book, we have RT Storter.
Yes.
Now, I don't know where it came about, but there was some terminology that was used. I don't really know if it was factual of the time, where you had RT Storter, RT Wah. The RT Florida was Florida, and Idaho was Idaho. But Idaho, they also used another terminology for it too. And I'm trying to think of who the hell was on that jump. There was Gast, Trentonella,
Bobby
Castillo, and Manus. So it's also been terminology as RT Manus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And Manus, Manus was Recon Company commander at that time.
Sure.
And here he is. Yeah, I'll do it. I like old Larry. Boy,
you have to, man.
He's a good dude. He was a real good guy. He was early. He was enlisted at FOB 1. He was on Alaska, if I remember right. Matter of fact, he broke his arm before a mission in a fight in a club. And he didn't want to get written up, so he cut the cast off and went on a mission. Broken arm.
Whoa.
Larry's a good dude. I really like Larry. He was a soldier.
The way Nick Brockhouse picks on him in his books, you have to laugh.
Yeah, I got video of Manus at CCN, getting out of the Jeep and walking into the bar, you know what I mean? So, and again, great guy. He could socialize with the enlisted, which was another thing that you've seen, especially like CCN. You had the club. Yeah. Officers and enlisted were in there drinking.
Yeah, they had an officers club. The later Recon guys had theirs, but everybody still floated around.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? And FOB 2 or CCC did the same thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some guys were like, I won't drink with, the underlings. And he had the Sergeant Major's Club, and they did the same thing basically. FOB 2 or CCC, they came out with a Recon bar where they actually took a team room, knocked down a wall, and created a bar for Recon Company. Yeah. And the guys would just go in there and have a good time without having to deal with all the other crap, So again, it was, it was interesting. I couldn't imagine having the room next to it when you're trying to get some sleep. You know what I mean? These guys. Well,
they also had that one at CCN where a guy, I forget if he was a sailor or Air Force. He came in, was hanging with the guys. He's drinking. At some point, he drank too much. He passed out. He's on the floor. And he died. They put him under the bed, and they continued to drink into the night. At some point, somebody realized this guy was dead.
Yeah, but you missed part of the story.
Of course. That's why I paid the big bucks.
The Recon guys actually chalk outlined him before they pushed him under the bunk.
No.
They chalk outlined him and then pushed him under the bunk. Wasn't until the next day they realized the guy was dead. And but we chalk outlined him. Yeah. So I mean, again, how do you cover that up? How do you cover that up? I mean, and it should also be noted too. Separate subject. There were guys who were not SF qualified,
right?
Who served in MACV-SOG.
Sure.
Who ran Recon. They were, in 1986, when they came out with a long tab, Special Forces tab, they were grandfathered, the tab, if you ran Recon. Lou DeSeta,
sure,
and those guys. So there was a point where you were just running out of SF guys, and they were hitting airborne. They were trying to go for airborne. Airborne's always a better soldier. So they were approaching guys who were towards the end of their enlistment. That's how DeSeta got involved.
Sure.
And so there were guys who were not SF qualified during the period who did run Recon.
Yeah, because Lou ran with Keddenberg, then he ran with Pat Watkins.
Yeah, even the guy you had, Davison, he was a 173rd guy. He wasn't SF qualified.
Right.
And SF qualified meaning he didn't go to school.
I mean, Pat Eddington and Eldon went across the street from CNN into the junkyard.
Yeah.
And they recruited guys out of there.
Right, yeah.
One was really good, and the other guy was not that well.
Yeah, they came out of there. I know those guys. They came out. They ran Recon.
They did.
They did their thing. You know what I mean? I think it was more, come drink with us and let's talk you into this. You know what I mean? How much of a man you're going to be. It's like Parner. He talks about he was in college.
Sure.
Getting drunk.
Yeah.
And the hippie protesters were mouthing off, and Joe's like, you know what? Screw this shit. I'm joining the Army tomorrow. Yeah. And the next morning he woke up and he's like, I'm a man of honor. So he went down and he joined the Army. You know, that's how he did it. He's a man of honor type thing. And I think that's a lot of the guys who got talked into stuff. It's like, did I run my mouth? Did I write checks my ass can't cash? You know what I mean? Or am I going to step up and do this?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's where Storter Storter put his team together, in the club drinking,
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'll do this, and started running his mouth, and then things got out, and it's like, well, he's willing to do it, so he had to find people who would go with him, and he had Michael Bentley, nice guy. He's coming to the reunion this year, and Moyer was there, and Newman Ruff. And also there's a couple guys that should be noted that did both Halo and airborne jumps. There's a couple.
There's a couple on those lists.
Yeah, there's a couple on the list who did doubles. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's one thing stepping off a helicopter. At least you're together. You know what I mean? But stepping off tailgate of a plane.
Yeah, and then like with Cliff with the first Halo jump, they jumped in a rainstorm. And even there, Mike Taylor, we had the interview with Mike, SOGCast number, I think it was number 10, Mike. And he talked about how he told people in Saigon, don't jump in December because there's rain. There'll be monsoons in that area. And they ignored him. They jumped. They had to jump in the rain. And they had those black boxes that they could, Leslie, monitor each other or be able to track each other.
Yes.
So they jump. They're not waterproof, so by the time they get to the ground, they don't work.
Yeah. Well, JD Bath, when he did his, he said, he comes to the jungle camp, he hit the ground hard, knocked him out.
Really?
Yeah, he knocked him out. And so he wakes up, and he said, I wake up, and, first of all, you're trying to figure out, am I really here?
Yeah.
And he said, I got my equipment on. He says, I'm cutting through it, cutting his equipment, And he said, all of a sudden, I finally cut through. He's like, son of a bitch, that was a wire. Did I cut a communication cable? I'm a dead man here shortly, And then he realized that was a cable that went to the light on his chute.
Oh, yeah.
He had a little light attached to it. But he says
the light that's on his back, so other guys jumping could see the light.
Could follow in.
Yeah.
And again, I don't. There was one team, which was Washington, that actually jumped to the Indige.
Right.
And again, you had a lot of airborne operations that were jumping with Indige.
And Cliff had a few Indies with Cliff.
No. I take it back. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yes, they trained in Okinawa with them too.
Right.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They did. Manus did not. Sugar's team did, which was Washington, and Storter did not. So, but the other airborne inserts, you look at an American back at that time, 130 pounds maybe, but compared to an Indige, 100 pounds, soaking wet,
Yeah.
So who's going to fall faster, and none of this was.
Some of the Americans are big boys, like 250 too.
Exactly. So, these guys are dropping out, so it's just, Halo and Hey-Ho have come a long way, but that was the beginning of it.
It was.
That was the beginning. We started
Another
messing around.
SOG first.
Yeah, well, we started messing around with Halo in the 50s, but that was the first combat jumps that were actually made, in Vietnam. So you got to give them, especially, you're going out over bad man land. What do you think's going to happen?
And it's a triple canopy jungle.
Without
an LZ.
Good luck getting through there.
Yeah.
You just kind of, you look at these things and it's like, you got to be nuts to do it. You got to be nuts,
Well, being in SOG being nuts was a prerequisite, but it's like a double nuts.
You got to have balls of steel, And when you're young, you don't think things through. Like what if? It's like it ain't gonna be me, man. I'll be fine.
That should be the next SOG book. What if?
What if? If you really think about it, nobody. I don't think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, that'll be the next guy. That ain't me. It has to be. How could you do what you did and not just have brass balls?
Yeah.
So it's amazing, and you give them credit for doing it.
Sure.
So I look at. There will never be another unit like it.
No.
There's absolutely never another unit like it. But, we did have some great Delta guys who came out, saw guys who wound up in Delta, wound up in Panama. So several of them wound up in Panama
sure.
with CAG.
Spider Parks was down there.
Spider was down there. You don't really hear a lot about Grenada, but you do hear about Panama because you had Acid Gamut, which was rescue of Muse.
Right.
Was a prisoner being held, a U.S. citizen being held by
Noriega.
Pineapple Face.
Yeah, Noriega.
Yeah, and again, great sidebar too. Robert Castillo, who was up at CCN, he was on Idaho.
Yeah.
He was actually in Panama as a civilian contractor, providing intelligence for Eldon Bardwell.
Oh, tell us how that happened. That was pretty cool.
It was great. He was talking to him. He said the Panamanians never thought we were going to invade. And Bobby, of course, is Hispanic.
Yeah.
So he'd be driving around in a Jeep, and he said, for whatever reason, they assigned me this retired SEAL, 6-foot white guy. And he says, we're driving around Panama. I'm like, we're going to get killed. I could survive this, you know what I mean? But he said the Panamanians never thought we were going to invade. He said we'd pull up to a fighting position or what have you, and he said, hey, can I take a picture of you? And the soldier would jump up there and hold his weapon and let him take a picture. And he'd run back and give it to Eldon and say, this is what's going on here, know? So, and I actually just started researching that a little bit more about that incident because I'm doing a sidebar in another book with Bardwell about that incident. Acid Gamut. So, again, it's great history that came out of SOG, and, it's just phenomenal history. It's just, I love it. Again, I got about 3 more books than I'm done. Everything that I've learned over the years is in a book. Yeah. And I'm sure there's things I've missed, type thing, but, I did my best, Absolutely. And again, we've lost a lot of good guys, we've lost a lot of good guys. So,
the history's literally dying.
Yeah. When we go to reunions, you remember the days, you'd have 4 or 5 tables of CCN guys and 4 or 5 tables of CCC guys.
You had to have bail money.
Oh yeah, yeah. But and the CAG guy, or the Delta guys, Project Delta guys, and now it's so shrunk down.
Oh yeah.
Now you got like 1, 2 tables.
We're trying to bring in some new guys.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Well, last year we had a lot of CAG guys, old retired CAG guys, which were great. They were great to talk to. They were Desert One. So it was great to talk to some of those guys, and they were, again, really cool guys just to deal with and talk to. As a matter of fact, we had a guy who was a MAGV SOG guy, who later became Sante Raider, Tom Yeager. And then we had the youngest Raider there, who wrote his book. Terry, great guy.
Oh, he's amazing.
And when you talk to him, he didn't think he was going to get on the raid.
Right.
He's like, I got no combat experience. And, and you can actually probably kind of see where they were looking at him thinking, why don't we take a couple young kids to, they got to start somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they trained for that operation. But it was a good book.
And even then, when they were training for it, they had to worry about the Russian satellites.
Yes.
They had to cover the stuff up.
Yes.
When the satellites, they knew when the satellites were going over.
And I've heard different stories on that because the building that they actually planned the raid on, somebody tried to register it as a historical landmark. And then I've heard stories that the building got destroyed. I don't know. I haven't followed through on that.
Well, Terry Buckler could tell. His book was Who Will Go?
That's it. That's it. Yeah, great guy. Nice guy. And again, just young, And again, imagine doing that.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah. We need volunteers.
We can't tell you for what.
We can't tell you for what. And chances are you may not come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think I'm a brave. I like to think I'm a brave guy. But when you hear these things, I mean, does your hand really go up? I would be thinking a little bit more, But again,
Indeed.
when you're young, you're stupid. You do anything, You're cocky, I should say, not stupid, but just cocky, But and then you train and train and train, and boom, it's go time. It's go time.
And where are we going to go? Oh, we're going to go to North Vietnam today, 23 miles west of Hanoi.
Yeah, they didn't advise them. They didn't
tell them to the very end.
Talking to those guys, they thought it was Cuba.
Oh, is that right?
A lot of guys thought we were going to Cuba. They were going to Cuba.
Yeah.
When I say they or we, I'm talking the United States, not me. I'm way too young for Vietnam. They thought they were going into Cuba.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. And then when you're on the plane ride, to NKP, Thailand. It's like, boy, this is a long time.
A lot longer than a ride.
This is a long time. So they touch down at NKP. They bring them into a hangar, and that's where they inform them of where they're going. Yeah. And it's too late to change your mind. I mean, game on. Game on. So, and then, again, it's a great history, and all the, and that's how they kind of tie that in with SOG, because all the communications was actually going through Monkey Mountain. That's how they kind of tie that in with SOG.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but it's kind of a, to be honest with you, that was a bunch of 6 group guys. So it gives the history, the Flash, a little bit more history.
Sure.
8th group, they nailed Che Guevara. Give them the history. Of course, we shut them down. And they rolled them into the 7th. But, it's kind of a shame. Speaking of which, I think I've heard rumor that Che's fingers are at Fort Bragg. They had to positively identify him.
Indeed.
So
no
it's
kidding.
kind of like, his pin pocket, he had a pin pocket, and he had a Rolex and a pin pocket. And the pin pocket was on a plaque at the 8th group headquarters, and that just disappeared. And then the Rolex, actually, a guy, one of the guys who was involved with taking care of him, has a Rolex.
Really?
Yeah. There's a couple watch forums about it and stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
And supposedly it had a Timex too. I don't know, but I've talked to some great guys who chased him down. And again, great history.
Absolutely.
Absolutely great history. Great SF history.
Yeah.
And again, it's apart from MACV SOG, but there was several MACV SOG veterans who were involved in that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, they were reassigned to the 8th group, and then, chased him down. Ethel Duffield was one of them. There was another one or two of them.
There was Rodriguez, and then Rick Prado.
Yes, and then there was a couple of Project Delta guys who were, Tom Carpenter was one of them. They ran them down. And again, great history to it, and then there was 4 or 5 Sante Raiders who were SOG veterans, and they had previous tours of MACV SOG and were, home when Bull put out the, I need volunteers. And again, it's interesting history. They just put up flyers, looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
Report to I think it was a theater or something, and guys were lining up.
And Bull Simon said, "You're in, you're out."
Yeah. They if you want to volunteer, and then they put a list together, and they were crossing people off.
Because there are a couple of SOG guys that did volunteer, and he said, "You've just been back from Vietnam for a couple of months. You're a no-go."
Yeah. But he was, Bull Simons.
Bull.
He's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Again, there's a great photograph, and Tom Yeager actually pointed it out. They had a Nightingale device. If you look in the helicopter, there's a Nightingale device which sets off a phony firefight.
Yeah.
There's a because they didn't know what they were going against. They've trained for everything, and like talking to Terry. One of the great stories he came out with, because if you look at the helicopter, you see all kinds of shit, chainsaws and ladders, and again, they didn't know what they were going to need.
Yeah.
So you got to take everything. So I think it was Terry. One of his jobs was to cut down a light pole. Well, not knowing where they were going, didn't realize it was a French light pole that was made out of cement. Oh. So chainsaw is useless. No. You know what I mean? So again, it's just great intelligence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or bad intelligence, if you should say. There's a light pole. Yeah, we'll just cut it down with a chainsaw. Nobody thought about what's it made of. So again, those are great histories of those guys too. And there ain't that many of those guys left either.
No.
There isn't that many of those guys at all. In matter of fact, they all went in with the red dot scopes. Those were relatively new, and they were modifying stuff just like you guys did. So
sure,
you had stuff that you needed. Like your little mini grenades that y'all carried. I mean, you said you carried them in a canteen pouch. You just carried a whole bunch of them.
Or at least a few.
Yeah, great little things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and you talk to other guys, and they're like, yeah, I used to clear out bars with them.
No.
Bars to clear, you throw that in there, you know? So, but, and again, there was a reason to have them. If you were in an RON and you're getting probed.
Yeah.
You could carry a whole buttload of those things. Worthless fragmentation or concussion wise, really.
Right.
But it would keep the NVA at bay.
Sure.
You throw one of those and then throw 3 or 4 rocks and then throw one of those, and at least it'll hopefully get you through till the morning,
Yeah, you play that little game of like, am I throwing a hand grenade or a rock?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
hear them scurry away.
And that's a big thing. I mean, U.S. ordnance have always been good. The NVAs weren't that great. So no, they were sealed in wax.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the heads of the grenades are sealed in wax, which obviously in a jungle environment didn't work well. Wax melts. But yeah, you had South, a bunch of good guys, but different because they ran Cambodian targets, which were different. Now you ran a target in Cambodia too, didn't you?
Yeah, we had 3.
Now, when you went in, did they talk to you about the rules of engagement were different?
Oh, sure. That was part of the briefing. It's like, talk about culture shock.
Right.
After running into Laos with TAC Air, which would be everything from Spectre down to A1 Sky Raiders in Cambodia in 68, all you have is that, we had the 20th Special Operations Squadron, the Green Hornets. Now they had both gunships, they had miniguns, and they had the state-of-the-art UEs. And we did the dummy inserts. So they did, I forget how many, but they did a couple dummy, then they put us in. And then when we had the prairie fire emergency, they came and got us. Thank God they got there when they did.
Yeah.
Because they were just coming at us.
Yeah. Now, talk to us about you, though. I mean, you're young. When did you join the Army? How old were you?
I flunked out of college.
Okay.
So I joined in December 66 after I read the Green Beret.
Okay.
I was 20 years old.
20 years old. Yeah. All right. So you go in. Now, did you, when you signed in, you signed in obviously airborne, but were you promised SF selection?
No, it was airborne unassigned.
Airborne unassigned. Okay.
On our day. So you went through basic, then the AIT, the recruiters came out. And they had like one of these mass assembly halls where there's like 700-800 guys and like a huge gym, everybody's sitting on the floor, but it's raining. So the cooks come out, the communication guys, MPs come out, and like the cook said, "This is a job you'll never go hungry, you know." So at the very last, a little bandy rooster of a Green Beret comes in. It was raining. He's had his fatigues, they were wet. Came and the stage had steps on both sides. He came in and did a vertical jump onto the stage, turned around and said, "I'm here for SF, Special Forces. If you want to join, if you want to think about it, see me outside." Anybody interested? Well, I jumped down I stood right up, me and 4 or 5 other guys. And the rest of them just sitting there going, "You guys are going to Nam in a month. I need more training after jump school, man."
Okay.
So that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
All right. So you get to Nam.
No, we're reversing the interview process here. Well, no, everybody else has heard the story. So we go through in-country training, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was, and then at the end, it's like they told us back at base in camp at Fort Bragg, there will be a little guy that's going to come out and say, "We need volunteers. Don't do it." Well, we just saw the movie, The Green Berets.
Good movie.
Little guy comes out, "We're looking for volunteers." Johnny McIntyre goes, "For what?" He goes, "Can't say, either you're in or you're not." So we, of course, volunteer. What would the Duke do?
Again, you're young. You just, it ain't
Next
gonna be
day,
me.
we're fly up to Da Nang, House 22, and get the briefing.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And,
I know.
You had House 22. You had House 10.
Yeah. House 50.
House 50, which is a SOG warehouse. And then later on, they called it the Pink House.
Really?
Yeah. Recon guys actually rented a small villa in Da Nang.
Yeah.
And It was actually, 2-stage. One for their girlfriends.
Right.
And secondly, when Indians got wounded, so you keep them on the payroll. He'd go there to provide security.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Recon guys, they're smart. They figured that shit out real fast,
Complete with the safe houses.
Yeah. And then you had Doc.
Doc Padgett?
No. I got to get it right. If you say Wang, you got it Wong. Yeah, Doc Wong. So he taught me that. He's the one who taught me that. But he was a fully qualified doctor who volunteered.
Yeah,
and he was actually a surgeon up at CCN.
No kidding.
Yeah. He ran Chase Medic and stuff. And here's a guy who's now vested.
Yeah.
In schooling, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And he's still willing to go do this. You know what I mean? Again, he was one of those guys who just, let's do this.
Sure.
A great guy. He ran Chase Medic. He flew. He put himself right into a rotation roster.
Really?
So, yeah. Again, he's a great guy. And you had, like I said, you had the Recon guys. Most of them or know of. Guys who have passed away, of them.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't realize there was actually a 10th group TDY team that went in there at the end.
Yeah.
And they were doing it was a toll house project, and they required volunteers out of Devens.
Right.
Couldn't be married. You couldn't have kids. There was a list of stuff. You had to have been to Nam before, and that's where Hoot Gibson and those guys went back over there to do these sensors. It was like lasering targets and stuff, and that's when Gibson was killed. And I looked him up because he was awarded a Silver Star.
Yeah.
But man, there's just no write-up on it whatsoever. It's just kind of just recorded in the congressional records. It's a real shame. So
yeah.
At least 10th group had a little bonus, and then there was a second draft that went in later on. That was when Butler took a larger team in. And that was during the Easter Offensive of 72.
Yeah, right before the Easter Offensive.
Mm-hmm. They were doing all that.
Yeah, because that's a chapter that I want to get someday, personally, because Jim had his Recon team, and he was, in fact, when they had when they went in for the Bright Light for Intruder with Cliff Newman and them,
yeah,
Jim Butler and his team were under enemy attack. And so Cubby goes, both teams got prairie fire. Who do I pull first? And Jimmy says, pull them. Well, that mission or later, they put they took the 60 millimeter mortar with them and dropped either white phosphorus or something would burn into the Ashall Valley. And Spectre would be up, and he would direct airstrikes into the positions off of that round in the valley. They did it for 2 or 3 nights. Okay. Of course, the Army just goes, okay, come back, here's a new mission. Air Force took the mission and came back, and when Jim got married in 72, a month or 2 before the Easter Offensive, he gets a phone call from the Pentagon. You will be in the Pentagon tomorrow at 0900 hours for a briefing. He said, I'm getting married. Yeah, we know. Get married and come to the Pentagon. So I forget, he told me it was a day or 2. So, but others have said it might be a little bit. Regardless, he goes to the Pentagon. They give him a team of flunkies and go, you're going to go to Vietnam with a special project. So he sends them over with the flunkies for some reason, but he runs into his old team. So his 01 that he gave his Car 15 to gives him back his Car 15.
Wow.
They train up. The Air Force came out with a black box. And by 72, the NVA were conventional. They went into the middle of the NVA camp, put the box in, backed up, and directed airstrikes off the box.
Wow.
They did it. The first one was up north. Then they did one in Khartoum, and did a third one outside of Saigon. And according to Jim, at that time, from my old notes on that, had they not done that, they would have had more armor and more personnel. But the airstrikes were so formidable.
They were.
Allowed the South Vietnamese to defend themselves against that.
Yeah. Again, that was technology advancing at that point in time.
Yeah.
And actually, I always kind of wondered, because they came out of 10th group, I was like, all right, well, who's up there?
Yeah.
And Northrop and Grumman. And I'm like, oh, okay, this all kind of makes sense. It all kind of makes sense now. Okay, they've created it. They need to train some people on it to get it over to Vietnam, And that's what, that kind of, again, Green Berets are adaptive. You know what I mean? They're not stupid guys,
We're the epitome of flexibility.
Although there's a couple of them that I really kind of wonder how they made it through selection. But, they're good old boys. You know what I mean? Can fix anything, skin anything, eat anything, type thing.
Well, I think a key part of the selection process is how you work with people and whether you are adaptive.
Very true.
And be able to think out of the box.
Very true. I'm kind of like, okay. Matter of fact, we had one guy of a CCN who stuttered. And he was he was a commo guy.
Yeah.
And he said, he talked to 1-0 into letting him on the team.
Really?
Yeah. And he was an older guy.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, I'll let you on the team. And he said, sure shit, we got him on us. We get in and the NVA are on us. So, tell him to, raise Covey, and he gets on the phone and starts stuttering. Oh, no. All the Indians are looking at him. Apparently they handed him an ERC 10 because the Prick 77 wasn't working.
Yeah.
So they handed him the little ERC 10 to survival radio. And apparently he turned it on the whoop, whoop, whoop signal. You know what I mean? And the NVA look at it like, we're going to kill this guy. He takes it away. And so, again, you kind of deal with, that kind of stuff,
Sure.
And, but yeah, again, a funny story. I mean, you just talk to the guys and it's like, man, with every sad story, you got all these humorous stories.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess that's how you kind of survive. You kind of, you get to defuse, if you will.
Well, the saying at Fubai was, you have to laugh to keep from crying.
It makes sense, you know. And to point out, and I know I've said this before to people don't realize World War I, World War II, Korea, you went over as a unit. You came home as a unit, usually by boat.
Right.
So you had time to decompress. You had time to talk to your friends about when Joey was killed or Timmy or whatever.
Yeah.
And work that shit out in your mind. Vietnam, you went over as an individual. You were a replacement. And you came home as an individual. Not only that, when you processed out of Vietnam, 28 hours later, you're at home.
Yeah.
Sitting in your mom's living room. You know what I mean? So you had no real time to decompress, which is another thing you got to give it to the Vietnam vet to do. I mean, he got his shit together, moved on, So I think that's a large part of it when people say, vets got problems and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but you got to realize you didn't do your job. You didn't get these guys time to decompress. And a lot of guys,
who would have thought about it?
Nobody did. And a lot of guys processed out when they came home. It was, you checked into Washington.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Yeah.
And they're like, hey, you're gonna re-enlist. And a lot of guys, like you are like, man, I ain't going to Fort Leavenworth to be a prison guard. Sign me out.
Yeah.
And boom, you left there. They issued you new uniforms, which again was stupid. I don't understand why they did that. No, you have to have a new uniform if you're getting out of the Army. What a waste of money,
Yeah.
And then you're home. So, and then when you're home, you could go to the VFW and meet other Vietnam vets.
Oh, no, you weren't allowed.
You couldn't talk about what you did.
No.
Oh.
We weren't even allowed. Vietnam vets were not allowed in the VFW halls or the American Legion.
Oh, really?
When I came home.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they had changed their rules a little bit.
They changed their tune.
But the ones in Trenton, New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, and
I can bring you in as a guest. If you want to have a drink because you're a vet, you could be my guest.
Yes, okay.
But sorry, you won't be able to join.
That's nice.
Okay, in that case, thanks.
Yeah, see you later.
Yeah.
And even if you did run into another Vietnam vet, for this little sliver of a country, the regions, the four corps that they divided it in were so different.
Dramatically so.
So
sure.
Your war being an I Corps versus a 4-corps guy, you're worlds away. You got nothing in common except the enemy.
Yeah.
They've dealt with mosquitoes and, you're dealing with the thick-ass jungles, triple canopies. So even trying to talk to another vet is hard. It's difficult, you know? And when I went to Vietnam, and I was up in I Corps looking around, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this isn't a place to be fighting. You know, you get the, a mountain here, a little mole over here, and just like these Marines, Marines slug that shit out. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, I'm just like, I got to give it to the Marines, you know? I mean, that was a bad area, you know? So
Sure.
you're fighting uphill all the time, you know? So, so anyways, that's my little rant about, Vietnam vets and how people always,
after the first 3 hours here, maybe we should just think about closing out. Are there any final thoughts there? Because
I'm good. I mean, anything you need, I'm here, man.
I can't think of anything, and I wanted to thank you for coming in. I guess we're at that point where we do the official closing, sir.
Do appreciate you having me out.
All right. Well, thank you kindly for coming out, and as always, we want to thank Jocko Willing Productions for making this possible. And we thank Jason for taking time from his busy schedule en route to California to stop by for a little interview about the history. We encourage you to purchase his series of books. They're a little expensive, but for an accurate history, hopefully all the libraries in America will get them so people can at least visit the library to read them. But in the meantime, we always thank our service members today, first responders, and people that are particularly in Border Patrol that are trying to defend our country against great odds. And as always, last we thank Jocko one more time. And then for those who did not come home from our war, we ask for to consider them, to be with them, and keep them high in our thoughts. As always, God bless America.